All right. So this is the Park It podcast. I'm Reggie Parker, the host of this new random show that I wanted to put together, and we've got Sage on the line. Thank you for joining me.
Of course, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yep. And I've known you for a while through like the comedy community and just kind of like hanging around, being a pal, kind of Golden Girl style.
Yeah, we've been friends for what, 6, 7 years now?
It's about
I
that.
think
About
coming up
that.
on 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And us being the youngest people alive. It's almost inconceivable.
I know.
But yeah, I think that out of most of the people I know, you definitely have a moral center, and you're not afraid
I'd
to
like
let
to think
people know
so.
what you think.
Oh, for sure. You know me.
Yeah,
I tell it like it is.
yeah. Like for everybody that thinks that like cancel culture, whatever is a thing, like no, you're proof. You can tell it like it is.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a difference between saying something outlandish and expecting not to get in trouble for it
Right.
and saying something that might upset someone but makes sense. It's like if you're being racist or sexist or misogynistic and then get caught, it's not cancel culture, it's accountability.
Right.
Um like
It
it
it just I mean like obviously in current events the most obvious examples like Gina Carano from
right.
The
The whole
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian, yeah.
And people are like, how could you do this so suddenly? Like I've seen that post a couple times. I'm like, this is a years long like problem for her. She's been
Right.
doing this
It's
for
not new.
yeah. Yeah. I mean that's why she got pulled off of Fast and Furious. So it's not like this is
Mm.
her first foray into
Yeah, it's not her
being
first offense. She's
yeah.
again, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, but people are still going to back her up. Someone else is going to pick her up. Like, she'll be fine.
Oh, she
And
already
other
got
people were, yeah, people were like, she's a bad actor anyway. And
she is
someone
a
else was
bad
like,
actor.
all the actors on the show are bad actors. They're like, no, 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 no. She's a little bit different. I haven't watched the second season of The Mandalorian. I watched some of the first. Um, but yeah, you can't just say whatever the hell you want and think there's not going to be consequences. That's my favorite freedom of speech argument. Well, what about freedom of speech? Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequences. You can't walk up to your boss and be like, yo, shut the fuck up and not get fired. Like,
Right.
you can be like, hi, I kindly suggest you change your tone or whatever. Like, you can politely tell them to fuck off, but you can't just outwardly say something like that and expect to keep your job. That's not how this works. It's not actually what freedom of speech means.
Right.
And
Right.
then people are like, oh, well, it means like freedom of speech against your government. That's not entirely true either, because if you're out there, be like, I'm going to go assassinate Trump or assassinate Biden or assassinate whatever president and post it on Twitter, the FBI and the CIA
Yeah,
and everybody is going to be at your freaking door. So, no, it does not mean what you really think it means. But I mean, all these people saying we're infringing on their constitutional rights, you'd think they know the Constitution.
yeah. Lot of constitutional scholars this week
Oh,
out of
yeah.
nowhere. I didn't know. I knew so many. Uh,
Right? I didn't know the having to get a vaccine and wear a mask was infringing on your constitutional rights. Like, I'm an American. I was a citizen. I was born here. I couldn't be like, yeah, the Seventh Amendment is whatever. But if you're saying it's infringing on your constitutional rights, you better know every single amendment. You better know the entirety of the Declaration of Independence of this at this point. If you're so American and this is something that's so un-American that it's affecting you.
yeah, yeah. I mean, from a rights perspective,
Excuse me.
the whole thing works because there are rights that we're constantly sort of means testing against and seeing what's allowed. But like the very fact that like you
Right.
have police is like it's an infringement. Like it is a social contract that we have that
Yeah.
in order to enforce our laws, we dictate that to a body. And obviously, a lot of people have different opinions about police. I know your opinions don't really match mine, but that's okay.
Yeah, but look, I mean, I only met your brother the one time. I've met your parents, like, and they're good people outside the uniform.
Right.
And otherwise, like I said, you know how I feel.
Yeah. And look, it's a consistent worldview, right? Like I like don't begrudge you because like, yep, you're across the board. This is how you feel, and that's how it is. And for me, like my feeling about police in this country is that obviously there's a problem with how it's
of
implemented.
course, yeah.
You know, like probably I'm like I mentioned because of my own background, I'm probably a little too close to it. But all that's to say that the very fact that like the people that are arguing against like the First Amendment and all that stuff, but they also like prop up the police force, and it's like, well, by definition, giving private citizens the ability to take your rights, like detain you, and imprison you, of course, to enforce laws, but like that is giving up rights. And there are all kinds of areas where we want people to give up rights.
And even then, they're not always enforcing laws. They're
very much.
They're just using the power that they have. Like someone I went to elementary school with years ago, but like we recently reconnected, was just telling me he got arrested in Westfield twice. He lives there. He got arrested twice for no reason.
Yeah.
One time for mouthing off at a cop that was like doing some fucked up shit, got arrested for no reason. And then the second time, I don't remember what it was, but the case ended up getting thrown out. The judge was like, "Why are you here?" Like, because it's Westfield.
Exactly.
Thanks, Jersey.
And you know that's consistent. Like I don't care what side of the political aisle you fall on. Like everyone knows that there are certain places that take law enforcement in different levels. Like New Jersey is notorious for having one of the tougher police forces in the country. I mean, they celebrate it, you know. So for people that are pro cop and stuff like that, I think if you're being honest, you have to say that we know there's a difference between how policing is done in different areas. Case in point, anytime they want to say some place is terrible, they say, well, look over there's all this crime, right? So like, yeah.
Yeah, but no, of course, it's always the people that are pro-police and Blue Lives Matter that aren't actually going to like denounce what these bad cops have done. They're just going to say, oh, well, that person was a criminal, or, oh, well, they were doing this. The whole, well, if he just followed the law. And it's like, you mean to tell me you believe that somebody deserved to die over cigarettes, or that somebody deserved to die over an alleged counterfeit $20 bill? Sure. I have found $20 walking on the street. It's not at this point, $20 really isn't even as much money as people want to think it is. Like, it's not. But no, they'll always say that they deserved it. And then on the other side of that coin, they'll also be like, well, what about this Black criminal who harmed this white child? Or what about this Black cop who killed this white person, or whatever? But they won't say, fuck that cop because he killed someone, even though they might have been committing a crime. Right? No, they'll say, what about this guy? It's always the whataboutisms. Always. It's never, they're both wrong. Fuck them both. It's, this guy did it. What about him?
Right.
Yeah. Why are we not talking about him?
Yeah. Part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is like, I just find that is the current sort of discourse on weirdly everything. I mean, even the impeachment trial, that's more or less the defense's case. And it's just like, why is it 0 or 100, right? Like, if you say anything sort of anti-police, they're like, well, I guess then let's just let society just collapse. It's like,
yes, well, let's let it collapse. Let all of this fucking burn to the ground. All of it.
If we stop police from insert any activity here, oh, so now cops can't do their job, therefore it's the fall of Rome. And it's just like,
right. Well, what are you going to do if you're assaulted? What are you going to do if someone breaks into your house?
I mean, oftentimes, nothing. Not engage with the police.
Right. They're not going to do anything. I'm going to call my insurance company, or I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to do something else. Like, I'll handle it myself.
Right.
What am I going to do? Like, oh yeah, I was sexually assaulted. Oh, well, what were you wearing? What was this? What was that?
Right.
You know what? I'll go to the hospital and deal with it myself.
Right.
It's not helping you. Like, what good is it for the cops to show up 20 minutes or 30 minutes after I've called them, after I've already arrived home, to find my home broken into and nobody's there? What good is that? Like,
yeah. And that's the thing. Like, when these sort of I call them bad faith arguments come out, which is like, well, you're going to want the cops to show up in certain situation, right? Like you said, sexual assault. Well, what does happen when people go to the police for sexual assault? Like, why is there a giant backlog of rape kits that have not been tested? Why is it that colleges and like different places, like,
fun fact, well, not so fun, we'll go back to that in a second, but the reason that there end up being a lot of backlogs is because some of those women who have like put through a rape kit have now rescinded, so they no longer like want to deal with it, but the rape kit is still there.
That's interesting.
In case my sister's a sexual assault advocate, so this was something that she told me recently, that yes, the kits are there, but they're not always necessarily ran because the survivor doesn't want them to be run anymore, but it's still in the system.
Oh, good counterpoint, because like for me, when it comes to information, it's like, okay, that's like a talking point that I'm aware of, and right here, real time, it's like, well, actually, there's a reason for it. It's like, that's usually the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, they still need to do a better job either way, but that is something that happens. That it's bad, but not as like horrendous as it's been made out to be over the last few years, especially.
Right.
But there is
Hargitay told me it was really bad in the documentary. You know, so
I was actually talking about Mariska Hargitay last night because I brought up how Stabler was in a few episodes of The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
And then I was like, did you know that Mariska Hargitay's mother was killed in a car accident? Because my mom, I don't know why, it just disappears from her brain. I have learned this fact 20 times.
Right. Oh,
she was an actress. And did you know? Yeah, mother, I know. You've told me this probably every time we've sat together and watched SVU. I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is bad.
Oh, of course.
I'm not saying it's not terrible. I'm not saying
like,
that there doesn't need to be a better system, but yeah, it's not as awful.
Good, because like that again is one of my goals here, is that like I'm not so convinced that I'm right about things that like you can present me with stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I'll take that information in, and I won't be like as quick to make that point without doing my own like research, right? Like,
yeah. No, again, I don't know if it's something that you could even like easily find.
Sure.
It's just some insider information that she has.
Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. But like talking about like bad faith arguments and like First Amendment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What kills me is that like all of these cancel culture arguments and things like that are happening in a public forum, right? It's like Facebook's banning me on Facebook. It's like,
right.
Like, I just I'm sure that there are issues with censorship and things along those lines, but the people that I hear making arguments the most aren't convincing me, because they're making their arguments on platforms that are apparently stopping them from making that argument. And
right. I can't say whatever I want. Well, you're saying it right now.
Right now.
Right.
Or under my post that I put up, and now you want to chime in, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like someone was like, oh, I don't think you know what freedom of speech means, my friend. I was like, I don't think you know what freedom of speech means, my friend.
Right.
Like, I was like, it doesn't mean you can say whatever you want and there not be any results or consequences. And they were like, you don't know what it means. Bitch, you don't know what it means.
Right. And now you're in the loop. Like kind of going back to the Gina Carano thing, it's like, okay, right. we could parse like some of her different views, but like let's break it down as like a coworker, right? Like you're working on the set. First of all, the reason that you even have a job is Pedro Pascal is the star of the show. And you know, you're mispronouncing people and stuff like that. And it's like, well, Pedro's got a trans sister, and I'm sorry, like I'm not buying Disney Plus to watch Disney Carano. Excuse me, Disney.
Gina Carano, yeah.
Gina Carano. I'm
Yeah.
like I'm paying to watch the dude from Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah.
Even if I can't see his face. It's just like, yeah, man, like you can't go to work and just like shit on your coworker's desk, right? Like
yeah,
there's a line.
exactly. Yeah. You cannot just do whatever you want.
I just find it like,
I mean, you know, and it's so funny that the people who say that are the same people are like, you just want to see everything crumble? Do you want people to be able to do whatever they want or not? Because
right.
you're pro-police and then you're pro-freedom of speech, but in the way that you think it means that there's no consequences for anything. So either you are also for absolute anarchism,
right,
anarchy, or you need to read up a bit on some things before you keep opening your pie hole to say some dumb shit.
Yeah, and I mean, like by that logic, it's like, okay, freedom of speech. So then, like, I guess, for instance, on the right, Antifa and Black Lives Matter should just free reign, like say whatever you want. Like,
right.
Why am I taking in like your input on this equation? Because you just said I can say whatever I want, right? And I think that's what gets me. That like whataboutism is like. I think the biggest problem with our discourse today, like something else being bad doesn't make the original thing good.
Right. This whataboutism, especially, I mean, it's been happening for years now, but especially the last 4 years, comparing the prior 4 to 8 years and onward, like,
sure.
How about we do this? Like, if we're going to talk about whataboutisms, like Clinton was impeached for a blowjob, essentially. I mean, there's obviously more nuance than that. Bottom line, that's what happened. I mean, there was the whole power thing, and Monica Lewinsky was an intern, yada, yada. We all know the deal.
Yeah.
But we have this man who incited an insurrection, has caused multiple problems, has gotten people murdered over the last 4 years, but even more so, especially over the last year. And Bill Clinton was impeached over a blowjob, but now there's a struggle as to why he's being impeached a second time. Why the hell was he not out the first time? Because y'all motherfuckers don't have a backbone? Like,
yeah.
Why wasn't he out? Oh, well, you know, we decided not to, whoopsie, and then we got more time of bullshit, and now he's not even president anymore, which isn't to say that this shouldn't continue on, but
yeah, I've been kind of monitoring the impeachment sort of closely, and like, yeah, Clinton it is the blowjob, but also I guess he perjured himself in that situation.
Right, but
yeah, but you know, and I get the sentiment that like, all right, he didn't tell you guys the truth, and like that was enough, right? Like, I think, and that's what you're talking about, the degree. So,
right,
telling a lie is enough to impeach somebody, but this isn't.
But 4 years of daily lies isn't.
Yeah,
and inciting a riot and insurrection isn't. And telling white nationalists to stand back and stand by isn't, or any of the violent, horrendous things he said over the last 20 years even. There's no reason he ever should have been voted in to begin with. But now the last 4 years especially, you mean to tell me you got nothing? Nothing?
Well, I've been watching it, and
again, you've been watching it more closely than I have, but
sure. Still. Well, I'll put it this way: the Trump defense is basically a two-parter, right? The first defense is a process argument that basically, because he's not in office anymore, this isn't constitutional. That, in my opinion, sort of strains logic, but
right.
From a right-wing perspective, that branches off into so many different areas, right? So like, he was impeached when he was in office. The trial began after he left. So
right.
Then you have kind of the other little like kind of right-wing breakdowns, which is that the Chief Justice isn't presiding over the case, which he wouldn't because it's not the current president. You know, the remedy doesn't match. There's just all kinds of arguments that I think strain credibility, but those are arguments that are being made. And the second defense is that his words, in their opinion, does not meet the threshold of inciting a riot. So I watched today, and they basically did like a supercut of Democrats over, decades, using the word fight like out of context. It's just like,
oh, of course.
So their argument is that like Democrats, to make their impeachment case, took video out of context. So then their defense was taking video out of context, taking us back right into whataboutism.
Right.
I personally don't buy it. You know, I know that you don't buy it. But this is the result when you do an impeachment, because ultimately an impeachment is not a legal remedy, it's a political one. And that's why every single impeachment in the history of the country has been more or less, especially at this level, on partisan lines. That's why Clinton's got acquitted. That's why Trump's very much going to get acquitted within the next 48 hours. So that's fun.
Yeah.
But that's what's going to happen.
But can he run again?
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a lot of things going around with like, well, if he's impeached, then he can't run again. And that's not true.
No, they would have to vote to also bar him from office. So
right. And who's to say they're going to do that?
They're not. You would need 17 Republican senators.
Oh, right. Yeah. I did see that. It's like, yeah, I saw something like that today. It was like, you think 17 Republicans are going to have a heart all of a sudden and do the right thing?
No, it's in their interest to make sure that one, if Donald Trump's guilty, they're guilty, so they can't have that. It really breaks down to that simple. And then they get the I'm trying to be nice, but they get the rubes to fight their battles for them. It's like that's every political party, right? Like they rile up the people that are their constituents to try to get them to fight their sort of proxy battle in this current culture war that we have. Again, I think it's all connected to what we were talking about before, this First Amendment fight that we're going back and forth about, the Gina Carano type stuff, the cancel culture. And they're talking points. they're talking points that I think people get way too invested in. Like, your average person is not getting canceled, whatever that means. Like, it's not happening. No one cares about you. Person that works. Again, I'm gonna stay away from that. But like, no one cares about you, guy on Facebook. Let's put it that way.
Right. But there is a whole group that's called Time to Play Let's Get a Racist Fired. I don't know if you've seen that or if you're in it. No. And someone shared something in there today, which was like just a dude. It was some guy calling someone a libtard.
Okay.
And it was like, oh well, like, and a bunch of people were like, I'm not quite sure why you're posting this. And she was like, well, it's offensive to, like, it's ableist and it's blah blah blah. And it's like, and someone was like, have you not been called a libtard or like a fucktard? Like, they're like, yeah, I mean, that doesn't make it right. Like, yeah, no, it doesn't make it right. But you really think this guy's gonna get fired for that when this entire group has proven time and time again that like a lot of these places don't give a shit because they also align with what this person is saying, so they're not going to give a shit if they say something racist on the internet. They're like, yeah, that's fine, like we believe the same thing. Like
yeah it's, and in that particular case too, it's like the purpose of the group is get a racist fired. I don't see how that falls into that category.
Right, exactly. Like, so it never, like, I was like, you know what, I'm not even gonna bother. And someone was like, this guy, I bet you, is from like a small town of 2,000 people where 1,970 of them are white. Like, nobody cares. They're not gonna care. He's this small town hick who they probably use libtard the same way that we breathe air. Like,
right.
They're not gonna give a shit.
I think that's a good point. That like it's all contextual. Like I've got to fully admit that like I have a bias because I'm an East Coast college educated, literal brunch type.
Yes, right. We have had many a brunch.
Yeah. Now that brunch may end at the gentleman's club, but that's not. That's
neither here nor there.
Exactly. So it's like
we are always very respectful.
Sure.
We've had full conversations with these people. Like
I am about as pro sex work as you could be. Like
likewise.
It's in my opinion, it's an essential service, and people need to stop treating people like shit for choosing to work in that field.
Exactly. The only way I will allow you to talk down on sex workers is if 1, you have never watched porn a day in your life.
Sure.
2, you've never bought porn a day in your life. 3, you've never been to a strip club. Hell, you know what? You've never even seen a woman in a bathing suit. Like, your wife is dressed head to toe. You fuck with a freaking hole in the sheet type shit. Because otherwise, you're supporting it only to shit on it. Like the same people who go to McDonald's, right? We all eat McDonald's. McDonald's is great. It's trash, but we all smoke weed. Well, we smoke weed. So, but those are the same people that are like, well, I'm not paying another extra dollar for a burger because this person is going to make $15 an hour all of a sudden. Like, why aren't you arguing for better wages at your job instead of shitting on people wanting to make a living wage? Well, it's for teenagers, and why do teenagers not deserve to make a living wage? Well, they live with their parents, and
right. But even like that talking point, kind of like we were talking about the backlog of kits and stuff like that earlier. That talking point is just not accurate. Like the average person that makes minimum wage is actually like a woman around the age of 30, with a family.
Right.
So this narrative, and that's what, again, talking points, that's what just destroys me, because I think it's really hard for people to realize where all this conventional wisdom comes from. It's quite literally programming, right? Like, why is it that you could just say, for instance, like 85 cents on the dollar? Everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. Like, that's not an original thought. The teenager flipping a burger is not like, where does that come from? Because like we mentioned, not everyone's a constitutional scholar. And and it's just one of those things where, for me, I understand being concerned about potential implications for a $15 minimum wage. Like, if you're worried about perhaps small businesses not being able to cover the cost, one, that's also kind of bullshit in my opinion, because it's business. Like, you should, there's ways
and if you're a small business and you cannot pay your employees living wages, you shouldn't be in business.
No. And there's other things I worry about, that like small business and stuff like that would rely more on like keeping people, which already happens, like part-time, and not extending benefits and stuff like that to them.
Right.
I think that is potentially
it happens with Walmart and Target.
Yeah, right.
So,
and that's the thing, like, it's already happening. So
what about inflation? Everything's been inflated. The minimum wage has been the same for years now, and prices have still been rising. You just haven't been paying attention until this argument comes around every year, and now you have something to say about it.
Totally. Yeah, I had a friend.
Why weren't you like, oh, prices are rising, why aren't we rising, like, and the cost of living, why aren't we rising wages? Only now, when it seems like it's just double overnight, when it's not. It's not like it's going to be like, oh, well, it's $7.25 in this state and it's going to be 15 tomorrow. No, it's not going to be 15 for like another 5 to 7 years. It's going to be gradual.
Exactly.
And prices, guess what, are still going to rise. So like.
Right. Because by the time it's $15 minimum wage, to be honest, like, the conversation should be about like a $20 minimum wage at that point,
Right. No, exactly. At this point, it really should be about a $20-$25 minimum wage.
Right.
Not even in the next 5 years at that point. It's going to be like, oh, well, we're at 15. What's the next 5 years look like? And then the minimum wage is going to be like, let's raise it to 30. And it's just going to keep going and going and going unless we just stop inflation where it's at. Like,
right.
Which isn't going to happen either.
Yeah. And it's just, it's interesting that these things are always framed in that, those contexts, right? The burger flipper, the small business. No one ever talks about who's actually, like we mentioned before, the average person actually makes minimum wage, but actually who's paying the minimum wage. It's not really, in most cases, small businesses that are the primary driver of jobs.
Yeah, even the CEO of McDonald's has been like, yeah, fuck it, sure.
Yeah.
Give them $15 an hour. Like, that man's making so much money. Like, it's so pathetic that Walmart, of all places, pay minimum wage and make sure nobody goes, like, I'm pretty sure they'll cut you off at 39 hours just so it's not 40, because then it's not full time. Yeah. So you can't get the benefits. And it's like, that's disgusting. That's reprehensible. But then on the other side of that coin, there are people that are still going to shop at Walmart because they have to.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Because it's cheaper or it's convenient because they're all over the place.
Right. That's the thing. It's like you're reinforcing sort of that poverty cycle, right? Like, I need things to be cheaper if I'm not making enough money. So I'm going to shop at places where they're not going to pay their workers enough to keep things cheaper. It's this feedback. And, talking about CEOs and paying things like that. Like, I always tell people I've worked in finance and stuff like that. And once companies started allowing themselves, once government started allowing companies to do stock buybacks, CEO pay has gone up like a ridiculous amount.
Right.
Used to be like maybe like the owner of your business making like double what you are. Now it's astronomical. Like, the numbers aren't even close.
Yeah, it's not even comparable.
Yeah. And people always say, well, it's because of what CEOs do, like what they take on.
Shut up.
I know.
Shut up. You mean to tell me you think this person deserves to make 2,000, however much fucking thousands a minute or an hour even for what they do? No, get out of my face.
Yeah. I mean,
but the thing with that is also people will always believe, when, not all of them, but a lot of people, which kind of people, believe that they will always be closer to becoming a millionaire than they are to homelessness.
Sure.
And those will be the same people living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And
it's hard. It's like, I don't know what that is, right? Like, I don't know what brings people to that place. I don't know if it's that kind of like crabs in a bucket mentality or something like that. But it's just confusing to me, the standing for these entities and major like corporations in a way that like it really just doesn't make sense at all. And even talking about like from a political standpoint, like your average person that voted for Trump, like, it lives in a red state, right? Places that are a lot of times economically depressed, and who would do very well with some of the entitlements that Democrats break out. But again, it's not really about the benefit. I think it's a messaging fight. And until you can win the messaging fight, you're just gonna, I don't know, we're gonna keep perpetuating that. But like, there's so many things that were controversial that are now like, you cannot touch Medicare, right? You can't touch Social Security now because people will lose their shit if you take their Social Security away. Like, that's just a form of like, it's social. It's a socialist economic policy.
You mean like firefighters and getting your streets paved?
Sure.
And even the police.
Yeah. Well,
but no, they compare it to Venezuela and Cuba and anywhere that has been socialist but not actually take into account democratic socialism. Or my favorite that's been coming out recently is the Nazis were socialists. Hitler was socialist. It's the Nazi Socialist Party. Here's the thing. Nazi is the important word here, not socialist.
Right.
Like, it's not the same.
I think from that perspective, right? Again, it's part of the messaging war. Like, people have had issues with like socialist regimes in the past and things like that. And
of course,
but I don't think, to your point, because there is a difference between socialism and democratic socialism.
Yeah.
Like, there fundamentally is. But it also just comes back into play that I actually read a book recently called Capitalist Realism. And one of the quotes from the book was that people can envision the end of the world more than they can the end of capitalism. Like, it's this assumption.
Right, yeah.
Right. It's something that as a stable society can't function without it, when historically most have, actually.
Right. Like, I love when people are like, oh, you're a leftist, you're socialist, communist. You know what? Bring it on. Bring on the socialism, bring on the communism. Fuck it. At this point, anything has got to be better than capitalism. It's got to be.
I think that I fall kind of in sort of the Warren camp, which is kind of like a hybrid of like capitalism with like socialism. But like what's never addressed is why this is as appealing as it is, why socialism is as appealing as it is. And it's because unregulated, unchecked capitalism has created a situation where there's not wealth equality. So again, going back to the minimum wage argument, $7.25 an hour is not enough to subsist in the country.
That's like barely enough for 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks. And you mean to tell me you think that you're expecting people to pay rent?
Right.
Or like the same thing, especially this past year, I was saying, like, I live right by Balboa Park, which is like San Diego's kind of central park. It's absolutely massive. And there's homeless people there every single night. I talk to them. I know some of the people. I give them hard seltzers and stuff that I've had in my fridge. And there are going to be people that will complain about a homeless problem while not helping at all over this last year, or evicting people. And then it's a problem. And even in downtown San Diego, it's becoming much more prominent. And people are like, how can you expect people to pay the exorbitant rent down here, and then there'll still be homeless people out sitting like all wrapped around the block outside, yada yada, all the bullshit that they love to tout. And it's like, because you caused this,
right?
Because you allowed this to happen,
right?
Because I mean, not like I'm fighting a good fight or anything. Like, I'm at home dealing with my own shit, but like, you can't complain about the problem that you caused.
Yeah.
You didn't stop rent payments, you didn't stop mortgage payments, you paused evictions, but they were still happening. You think these landlords give a fuck?
Right.
And you think these people that are already that desperate that they're thousands of dollars back on their rent that they're gonna lawyer up to do something about it? No. They'll either keep squatting or like just figure something else out. But at the end of the day, you can't complain about an issue that you caused.
Yeah, it's a tough scenario, right? It's a tough situation because like you look at this and obviously like people are saying, oh, you want to live somewhere that's clean and nice, and like you take these people that are on the sort of outside of let's just call it polite society, right? For reasons that you mentioned that are often systemic, or also just like random, like, to be honest, bad luck. Like it doesn't take much to fall into that spiral of downward mobility.
No.
And especially in a time like this with the coronavirus and everything like that, Like, I totally recognize my privilege in this situation in which I've been able to keep my job. I can work remotely
Right.
during this time. Excuse me, going back to wealth inequality, like because the student loans have been on a pause and different things, I've been able to take money and invest it in different ways and like literally
Right.
help myself out in ways. And it's been a lesson for me because if you take that out of the equation, which again, I get it. I signed up for student loan. I get it. But like, there's, again, big problems for the entire country that this sort of anecdotal, I worked hard, you didn't thing, it's not taking into account that like you're sitting on really a time bomb that like we're all going to pay for if we're not careful
Right.
with how we process this. The same way banks were too big to fail, the country is too big to fail by being obstinate about you signed a piece of paper, so now you're indebted for the remainder of your life. Like that's not really
Right.
a
But
solution.
money isn't real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's not. It's a
It's
concept.
not. And people are like, what do you mean? Isn't just about if not every country in debt. So like what the fuck does money matter?
Yeah.
Because we're not gonna pay it.
No, we're not.
So why does it matter? Why does the economy matter? Why can't we just let this shit collapse? Why can't we shut down for 3 weeks? End coronavirus, or at least close to it, get it way more under control than it is now. Oh, because we'll tank the economy. Yeah, well, guess what? A whole bunch of dudes just tanked some hedge funds. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But, and they view that as the economy. That's the thing. You mean to tell me that other countries could do this and manage it? You mean to tell me that China, who is 1 billion people, more than 1 billion people, it's nearing like 2 billion, if not at that point already, we're able to manage it and like not have 500,000 people almost die? I'm pretty sure that's not the death toll. America's got to have the highest death toll, but
Yeah,
because of the economy, because of this, because of what?
Well, I heard an interesting commentary about the debt, right? Like, if you were managing the debt, right? Basically, the interest on American debt is like around 1%. And if you account for inflation and everything else, we're actually outpacing our debt. Like our GDP is our future buying power from the money we're borrowing is actually better than like,
Okay.
yeah, let's just say that like you would take that deal if you were a major corporation, for instance. Like one of the reasons corporations are doing so well during this, or when they did the Paycheck Protection Program loans, was like they were low interest debts, and like corporations just chomp that up because that's a great deal.
Right.
The other side of it is they made a very good point that like if I owe the bank $1,000, I have a problem. If I owe the bank $1 trillion and I can't pay, the bank has
They
a problem.
have a problem.
Right. So there are arguments that like, for instance, China owns a lot of our debt. That if you're actually being realistic about this, if we default on the debt, who does it hurt more?
China.
I mean, yeah, like we're not going to give them money they loaned us.
Right.
So, like that. So it's like China has more of an interest in our success and our ability to pay back the interest on our loans than we're giving credit. And, again, this goes back to that sort of messaging that I'm talking about, that everyone says, oh, the debt, and they treat it like it's like me or you owing somebody $50. It's like, that's not how countries work. That's not how global economies work. You can't look at like, oh, the millennial bought too many avocado toasts. And
yeah, that's why I don't have a house.
Yeah,
that's why I instead pay too much rent in an apartment in San Diego.
Right, but your $1,200 phone is why you don't have a home. That.
Right, getting your nails done too many times.
Yeah, it's again framing. Like this country has a problem with poverty in the sense that like we've tied poverty to ethics, right? Like the rich, for instance, Donald Trump is a great example. For the right, Donald Trump must be let's say a good man or like an important man because he's rich.
He has money, right? But he's not.
Right. Right. So it's like, because of this bootstrap mentality in a system that's not designed for you to actually get social mobility. Like, that's the American dream. It's not the American reality. Like, someone that happens to have like made themselves wealthy, like, we pretend like it's someone came up with a great idea, and of course they deserve to get paid for that great idea, instead of like, is it generational wealth? Is it being able to again, having the ability to not worry about some of the things that like you and I worry about on a day-to-day basis, which allows you to focus on a business.
Right.
Yeah. It's just not as simple as Facebook wants us to believe.
Yeah.
And
I'm over here like, damn, you're drinking early, but it's not that early. It's drinking time on the East Coast.
It's definitely drinking time over here. But yeah, I think you're hitting on something that I think is super important to me, and obviously you, that like, we're coming from this, and I think that in general liberals do this. We're coming at this from like an empathy standpoint, like, basically our premise is that people shouldn't arbitrarily suffer in a country that has the resources.
And even then, I don't consider myself a liberal. I'd say I'm more leftist than that. I feel like at this point, the way that liberal has been attached to certain things is just like, yeah, I'm not them. Like, there's a lot of liberals are more like, defund the police and defund this and let's reform. No, let's abolish all of it and rebuild these systems, because there's got to be a better way. There's no reason that mentally ill people have been killed because a cop didn't know how to manage it, or I don't know. Well, I just think there are way too many cases of things like that happening that never should have happened. For example, the cops being called when someone thinks there's a suicide threat, like things like that. Like, don't call the cops on your suicidal friends. This is a PSA. Don't do it. Just talk to your friends, talk to their family. Don't call the cops. Like, and I do not say this like, don't take this with a grain of salt. Dude, don't call the cops on your suicidal friends. If you want to call the cops for whatever else you want to deal with, if you've been assaulted, if your house has been broken into, call the cops for whatever you personally. Other than that, mind your business and don't call the cops on your suicidal friends. That's it. Because it's going to be way worse for them than ever. And there's an even higher chance that once they are safe, they will actually kill themselves because they've been traumatized by this situation. Don't do it. Like,
no, fair. I think to your point, when you're saying liberal, that's another problem in this country, is that what we consider liberal in this country is more like towards the center and even like the right, traditionally.
It's a blue Republican.
Right. And I wholeheartedly like know that personally, like, if you're putting me on a scale, then I'm politically probably leaning closer in that direction than you are, because like, you're right, like, you are more of what I guess would fall under the category of like progressive, far left. But even that, I don't like categories, to be honest. I think
but I don't like
lame.
Even I'd say more progressive than liberal.
Yeah.
Because when you actually think about the word liberal, it's not like, you don't want to be liberal about these kinds of things. Like, you're like, yeah, whatever. It's a little, like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But like the cop thing you were talking about, I think that's important. And that to me has been an interesting aspect of the past couple of years, is that as a society, at least on the left, as it were, speaking of terms, there's been a reteaching, right? Like, there's been this movement of like anti-racism. There's been movements about how to engage with the police and like
Right.
whether you should call the police for what we now would kind of consider like petty stuff. Like, oh, there's somebody walking around my neighborhood. I'm calling the cops, right?
No.
Like that's an act of aggression now because of the implication of what is likely to happen because we've introduced this element of elevating the situation.
Yeah. Always.
It's just like when Gordon was on here, I was telling him, like, again, like as you know and mentioned, I have family members that are cops and stuff like that. But like at the end of the day, my take on it is that like if you're an entity, which the police are, that have a public relations problem, which they do,
right?
I'm not here to advocate for you. You got to advocate for yourself. And when you're pepper spraying 9-year-olds, like I don't know how to help you win the PR war, right? And to have like a police chief or something like that going and say,
that's not something you can win.
No,
didn't they try to blame the kid's father? Like, oh, if you look from this angle, he's holding something. But like, why are you pepper spraying children?
I guess I watched some of the interview with, I believe it was like the chief or some higher up, and they're saying, well, you didn't see like the whole situation or the way she was behaving. It was like, well, that still doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
We couldn't handle the 9-year-old.
You can't handle a 9-year-old? Yeah.
Right. Which then, going back to that point, then going back to escalating ideas and stuff like that, and then like I guess we should arm every teacher because 9-year-olds are like the most dangerous.
Right, exactly. They're wild. These 9-year-olds, these 4th graders, woo, buddy, they will beat your ass these days. Yeah. But it's such a dumb argument. Or even like the kids that have been freaking slammed to the ground by police officers because they've been rowdy or whatever. 1, why is the cop in your classroom? 2, why didn't you call this kid's parents? And 3, you mean to tell me you need to slam a 13-year-old girl to the ground?
Yeah.
Why are you a cop? That's the type of force you're exerting. You should never be a cop. And those are the same people that beat their wives at home. The whole 40% of cops. No. 40% of cops that we know of. The statistic that we know of that's been reported, not anything else. Like you see the statistics between rape, for example. How many rapes are going to happen? How many rapes are going to actually be reported? How many are going to go to trial? And then how many are going to be found guilty? It's not very many. So it's got to be the same thing on the other side.
Yeah. And I think that what it comes down to is that when you look at that, I will constantly go back to this messaging, like the way that we've treated people of color in this country, and basically like not allowed Black children to be children. That like there is a clear difference between the way society looks at that 9-year-old getting, sprayed in the face and a 9-year-old from like some suburban town somewhere in the country.
From Westfield.
Right, Westfield. All roads lead to Westfield. And I mean, like I don't know how, like in this current system, I don't know how you fix that because this call for defunding the police or whatever it is that people want to do with the police, it has to, again, how do I put it? I just go back to like, I can't argue against that feeling because like clearly what we're doing isn't working. The historical implication of the police force and how it's helped enforce some of these issues. Like when you think about policing in like a poor community versus like a rich community, even like minor offenses and stuff like that, policing is a tax, in my opinion. It's a tax on people. And like, if you have the ability to pay the tax, like the legal ramification is out of it. And if you don't, you're now beholden to the system. And just like sales tax in the country, a rich person paying like the 2% sales tax on clothing doesn't hit their pockets the way it hits someone that's, you know, making the minimum wage that we're talking about, living poverty wages. It's not an equal application. So like this idea that like we're all equal, the system is a system. It doesn't ring true because it's not. You know, like I can afford a lawyer, so I will get out of more situations than someone that can't.
Right. The same way that like tickets for people with money is nothing.
Right.
You can do whatever you want if you can afford to pay those tickets. It's just like, well, I did it. Yeah. And nothing's gonna happen. Like, that's it. Oh, I parked here and I got a ticket. Oh, well, that's $40. Like, it's nothing.
Right. And, yeah, and I mean, like, I know, like, when I used to work in the bar back in the day, and I would park my car, and you're sitting there, you worked all day, right? And, like, on a slow night, you might have made $40.
Right.
And then you walk outside, and there's a $40 ticket sitting on your car. It's like, that day is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you have to go to court for whatever reason, that's a whole, again, lost wages.
Even worse if your car's been towed and now you have to get it out of an impound lot. Like,
yeah. Like,
now that puts you in the hole.
Totally. Like for me, now because of the way like my job works is more corporate. Yeah. If I have to take the day off and go to court, I'm gonna get paid.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get paid.
Doesn't matter. You're gonna use that PTO and you're fine.
Right. I even had a situation like it was like a speeding ticket or something like that. Where like because of the place I work, you know, people heard about it and like they hooked me up with a legal professional.
Of course.
It was like, and I'm sitting here and like I've had the experience where I don't have a lawyer, I don't have the funds, and now I've lived that other experience. It's like it's a very different experience, and like that's not even taking into account some of the stuff we're talking about, which is perhaps the reason I'm even there is because of my hue. Right?
Exactly.
So
like I got pulled over in Asbury Park once. And the cop was like, do you know why I pulled you over? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I thought it was maybe because I didn't use my blinker at a stop sign or whatever. And I was like, no, officer, I absolutely used my blinker. I saw you. You were following me. I know I used my blinker. And he was like, but you didn't. I was like, but I did. So maybe it's out. But I'm telling you, I saw you following me.
Right.
A brown girl in Asbury Park. So I think I know a little better than that. I've been here. I have friends who've been here. I have friends who've gotten tickets in Asbury Park and all the fucking shore towns. Like, it's, and even now more so, like just walking past a cop, I get anxious.
Yeah.
Driving, even worse. And
that's an interesting point. Because a lot of, like we mentioned before, the Facebook arguments about like just comply, all that bullshit, right?
Right.
It's not taking into account that experience. Like that what you just said is like I get anxious around cops, right?
Period. Don't have to be doing anything.
Yep.
Walking, not even carrying a bag, not looking suspicious, wearing a coat, have my phone, my keys in my pocket. That's it. Maybe my license and my card if I'm going somewhere. And I am petrified that I'm doing the wrong thing, that I might look suspicious because now I'm wearing a mask that makes it even worse. Because I might not know all my neighbors because I'm relatively new to the neighborhood, that someone's going to be like, who's that person?
Right. Like, can that person afford to live here or something like that? You know, now.
Right. Yeah.
There's some unknown dissident outside my house. Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Like I personally, like I drive in the slow lane. And that sounds like, you know, not a big deal, but it's like, no, like I don't drive fast.
Right.
Because I'm black. Not that because I can't, because the other lanes aren't available to me. But like I've made a calculation in my head that like it's not worth being 5 minutes early. And like that again, sounds innocuous and it sounds small, but like it's a big deal, right? If you
Right.
really think about
Even
it.
more so as a black man. Like I
Right.
speed. Don't get me wrong. I speed
Sure.
in San Diego. If you're not, it's San Diego and California in general is the same as Jersey. If you're not going friggin' 10, 15 over the speed limit,
Right.
why are you even on the road? But I always like I'm always aware of my surroundings,
Sure.
especially on highways with so much open area. I'm like, is there a cop? Is that a
Mhm.
cop? Oh, that car looks like it could be a cop car. And now I'm going to slow down until they pass me and I can be
Right.
sure that
Yeah,
it's
I do that
not.
too.
But yeah, it's always, you always have to keep your guard up,
Yeah.
which is sad.
Right.
Like,
it's
oh, officer, yeah, I do have a weapon on me. It's a legal sized weapon. It's
mhm.
mine. Like, even like I'm thinking about getting a gun permit, and that even in and of itself is like, how is that gonna fuck me up for the future eventually? Like,
Yeah.
I have a clean record. I have no reason to think I wouldn't be able to buy a gun. I would be fine.
Yeah.
But now it's a matter of where do I carry it? How safe is it to have?
Right.
If I'm using this for my own protection and now I can't have it, what good is it? Like,
Yeah.
because someone's going to think it's not legal, or it's just going to be the wrong day, wrong time type of situation.
Sure.
And now whatever the hell's happened, and yeah, it's.
I think if it was just me, I would be seriously looking into getting a firearm, but I know that my significant other isn't a fan.
Yeah.
But if it was just me, I would definitely I would have a gun. Let's just call it what it is.
Right. Well, that's how it was for me and my ex up until last year. Really, he had no interest. Like I told him I might want one. Like especially when I was living in my studio. Not that it was a bad area or anything. Again, I was just a woman living alone on the first floor of an apartment.
Yeah.
Now I'm on the top floor. Nobody's really messing with me. There's way more apartments to get to before you even try and get to mine.
Sure.
But especially after last year and everything that happening and the protests and as things were getting more dangerous, he was like, yeah, we might want to look into this now. Like that's how people's minds changed. And I was even thinking about it the other day, like, why is it almost assumed that if you have a gun, you're a Republican?
That is I think the theme of this podcast is going to be messaging. Like they have convinced not just themselves, but like their message is so pervasive, it's carried over. They've convinced more or less the majority of Americans that like they're the party of law and order, they're the party of guns, they're the party of like they're the tough guys and all that stuff. And it's like,
right. And
no.
here I am like, no, I'm a queer leftist. I have a knife. I have my stun gun. I'm waiting. Like, I'm going to probably apply for a gun permit soon.
Sure.
And guess what? I am pro-choice, pro-LGBT, like LGP. I can't talk right now, and I'm not drunk. LGBT and all that. Again, like, I'm pretty gay. Like, I still, unfortunately, like some men, but like all that shit, and I'm the complete opposite. Like if that side hates me,
right.
But it's just so funny that you say that. It's just such a disparity that it's almost like, oh, you're not a Republican and you have a gun and you're for abortions and you're gay and black and like all this shit. Like it's the complete opposite.
And that's why I hate labels, because it's like, I am pretty much like I'm pro gun, but like I think that there needs to be like
absolutely
real reform there. Like if it should be as difficult to get a gun as it was for me to drive a car.
Yeah.
Like it should be that difficult. I'm not saying I shouldn't have access.
Some states.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, and there is what gets lost a lot of times in like anti-gun sort of conversations that like it's too easy. It's like it's actually kind of hard in most places.
Yeah. No, my cousin in New York, he's a Trump supporter, and we've talked about it since. What?
New York's a tough.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He like I talked to him. It was 2 days after Election Day, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to him, and he brought up about guns and how it was so hard for him to get one, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how long have you had the gun for? He's like, oh, like a year now or something like that. I was like, okay, so it was under Trump's presidency.
Right.
Yeah, so why the fuck are you bringing this up now as if this was a problem under Biden?
Right.
Like,
Right.
or if it was a problem under Obama. If this happened within the last 4 years, guess what, buddy? You can't blame the guy before, and you can't blame the guy who's not even in office yet. So that's a pretty stupid argument to be like, oh, well, it was hard. Well, one, it was hard because, like you said, it's New York. But two, you can't say it's hard because of Obama or Biden when the person in office now has made certain executive orders and has changed shit. So your
Right.
guy is the one who's the problem here.
Right. That's what's been interesting about the Trump presidency, right? Like he takes all the credit, gets none of the blame, right? Like he did
Right.
this really smart thing politically. I think he's overall kind of a dummy, but like politically, he has been able to finesse things in a way that's interesting. And I blame the left for allowing this to happen to themselves. But like he basically decentralized the presidency so that any problem was happening in liberal cities. So like when Portland was more or less occupied for
yeah, it was Portland's fault.
Right. It wasn't his fault. And you know, the entire time this stuff was happening, during his administration, he quite literally said, "This is what you can expect in Biden's America." And it's like, you're currently
right, exactly. That's the thing. You can't say it's Biden's America. I know someone who posted that shit too. Like, when the stores and shit were getting boarded up in New York, they were like, she posted something. This is the cousin I was just talking about. This is his brother's wife. She's a New York cop, and she posted something like with everything getting boarded up, saying this is Biden's America, and it was the night before election night. And my cousin was like, this is Trump's America. Right. And then she deleted the comment. Like, you can't say it's Biden's America. You can't say this is what'll happen under Biden. This is what's happening under this guy now. What are you talking about? How is there such a disconnect? You voted for him. He's your president.
Right.
So how are you going to say this is what's going to happen when it's happening right in front of your eyes by this guy that you voted into power?
What's interesting, and I like to bring up Trump stats whenever I can. You look at a guy who came in and for the first time in decades, I mean, maybe actually first time ever, someone that's leaving the office with people with less jobs than when he went in.
Right. Sorry.
That's a real stat. And like,
yeah,
there's, you know, the excuses that the pandemic, and I'll even give people that who could have foreseen a pandemic, which actually plenty of people actually have been talking about.
Right. It's about every 100 years, and Obama had a plan in place. So, I mean, actually, not that it was planned, we were prepared, and then Trump dismantled the pandemic force. So
we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. but like,
moving on.
He's the first president, I love this stat, since Hoover to lose the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So like, yeah, I mean, like, as much as he's supposed to be this guy who did so much for the country and the best president ever, like I just don't see it. No. Again, that could be my liberal bias, but like I find this right. This is something that I've been thinking about, and there's not a lot of people to talk about this with. I find that like a lot of times when I heard about how great Trump was, especially in the context of us as people of color.
Right.
I just had so many white people trying to convince me how good it's been for Black people. And I'm trying to figure out what that is.
What it is.
Well, I know what it is.
Is that it's something that's never affected them.
Right.
So they can say like, oh, I read this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for you guys. It does nothing for me, but I know it's good for you because I read it. And my president isn't racist.
Right.
He did this. He's done these good things. Like what? Like the unemployment rate. Bullshit. Whatever. Bullshit. Like, look, Trump is the worst president in modern history. I'm not going to say he's the worst president ever. There are
that'd be
worse, obviously, slavery and all that jazz. Which sounds like I take it so lightly, but I don't. Like, I just recently did a friggin' 23andMe, and it's like 51% like Portuguese and Spanish, and then 33% sub-Saharan African with recent ancestry in the Dominican Republic. So those white people took those black people and stuck them on this island. So it's not like I don't think about slavery, especially now, pretty often, that I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'll do the ancestry.com thing too and look it up even further. Like, so yeah, I'm not just like slavery. Yeah, like, it's very real. Obviously, we're here because of it.
Sure.
I just think it's a little funny thing to add on to the white people, that it's like to make them think about it again a little bit more, because we had those presidents that were involved in that. So I think Democrats and liberals and all that as a whole need to not say that Trump is the worst president ever, because that's very tone deaf. And I'm also not going to sit here and say he didn't do good things. I'm sure there are good things he did, but the bad will outweigh it every single time because of the bad he did. Because he had a vice president that supports conversion therapy, that's anti-LGBT, that's pro-life, which is really anti-choice more than anything. And because they want to delegate women's bodies and regulate women's bodies rather, and they're doing all these things that are so bad that it's like, fuck the good. Fine, pull up the fucking list of all the good things that Trump has done, and I will shadow it completely with a list of all the bad things he's done. So fuck off with your good argument. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter even now because he's not president anymore. But it definitely didn't matter then, because I saw all the ways the bad things he were doing affected everyone I love.
Right. And like, because I like to be somewhat fair, if that's possible, with Trump. I can name like the kind of like key Trump accomplishments, like they basically break down as such. For, like I said, there's a filter, right? Because there's like the statute breakout for white people, and there's a statute breakout when you want to convince black people he's okay. The stats for white people, the tax cut, right? Which
okay,
which
sure. Stupid. Let's cut. Not even talk about it.
The unfinished wall.
Was it even started?
They did wall. There was some wall. There were improvements to existing fencing, and there was new wall that was built, but not nearly as much as he said. And Mexico did not pay for it, although if you listen to the right,
of course,
in some weird backdoor kind of way, maybe they did through some trade deal.
Of course.
Bullshit. Sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, the one thing that I would say Trump was successful on, in my opinion, was foreign policy, in the sense that we didn't get into more wars. So like, that's a positive. I'm not going to shit on the guy because we didn't like engage in more frivolous wars. And I think that his stance on China was, he was almost there, right? Like, he identified a problem, which is that like we're not producing enough stuff here, and that China has been like doing like intellectual property theft. But the way he went about it was really
but the
stupid.
thing with that is not that we're not producing as much here, is outsourcing.
Sure.
It's not so much America or corporations not wanting to. It's going to be so much cheaper in this country and I get to make more money. Outsource it. We're going to outsource it. Malaysia, India, all of Asia, really.
Yeah. Which the pandemic.
Outsource it. Fuck it.
The pandemic exposed that when the time came to try to produce some of the protective gear and stuff like that, we didn't have the resources.
Right.
And let's call it what it is. And this is what I keep thinking about Trump. Like, in my opinion, he's a guy that was smart enough to identify a problem, but not smart enough to actually fix it. Like, doing tariffs in China didn't fix our relationship with China. You know, all that bullshit. But like, when you talk about black people, the Trump accomplishments, there's two. He had this thing called opportunity zones, which people always like to say helped low income places. It did not.
Of course.
No, it just gave people tax cuts to do things in low income places that didn't necessarily go back into the community. And he'll always talk about that one time he had a meeting with a bunch of historically black colleges and sort of made it so that a budget thing that got passed every year anyway would just happen automatically.
So this thing that was already happening, he
will happen without anyone doing anything about. But also puts you in a situation where if you wanted to, I don't know, renegotiate things because like maybe a global pandemic or some other economic event, like you have less leverage. So I wanted to, because you brought up 23andMe, I want to talk about this because like I am sub-Saharan African.
It's like there was like 15% Nigerian and then like Sierra Leone.
I'm closer to like Nigeria, like Senegal, that type of area, like right on the west. Like it was real easy to grab.
West Africa. It was sub-Saharan and then West Africa.
Yeah, and then like I've got some like European background, like kind of like Irish, Scottish, like that region, stuff like that. But we were talking about like police really trauma earlier when you were saying like how you react around the cops, and I have a similar thing, like obviously with the driving in the slow lane type thing.
Right, but generational trauma is a thing. So
for sure. Generational trauma is a thing, and even just like the trauma you got just existing. Like I've found that because of some of the circles that I've run in and things like that, and I think that you may have had similar circumstances. I found that like I've been in a situation where I've got to see some of like that slip up racism, like in my face, you know, like people getting real loose in the mouth around me.
Comfy.
And I just like growing up and stuff like that, like it certainly had an effect on me. I just wanted to see if like you had any sort of that residual trauma in your own life.
Not until I was older, really. And even then, like I guess some of it is kind of being like the white girl in high school because I wore the DC skate shoes and listened to Linkin Park and was like researching insane asylums, which is my own craziness separate from anything else, but obviously being a very white people thing. Right, exactly. It is a Jersey thing. People think it's so weird when I'm like, I used to go to like abandoned insane asylums. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I'm like, I lived in Jersey and New York. We have 2 volumes on books about us being weird, okay? Like
as a outside observer, because I grew up in like Maryland and DC.
Oh, right.
Like,
yeah.
Like I came here, I'm like, you guys have a very specific brand of people.
Of weird, we are very proud of how weird we are, and I love it. But no, I grew up in suburbia, and even then, like my parents came from like very well-off families. Like my grandpa worked for U.S. American Airlines for years. Like they were fine. They like bounced around the country. My grandma, I'm pretty sure, was a homemaker. But my grandpa worked in accounting or something. My grandpa was a very intelligent man, and he worked with money and financing, and he was always very well read and very eloquent. And the way that they were all raised was just like that, like very well spoken and educated. My one uncle is an architect, I'm pretty sure. My mom went to FIT before eventually becoming a homemaker because she always wanted kids. But I didn't really grow up with having like a difficult childhood because I went to Catholic school, and even then my Catholic schools were a melting pot. So it's not like, I went to school with only white people. It's like, no, I went to school with all kinds of people, and I was never seen as the white girl there because it was like, we're all kind of in suburbia, and this is the kind of music we listen to, and these are the people we hang out with, and it's all kind of very similar. And then when I went to high school, it was a little bit different. The high school I went to was a little bit more in an urban area. I went to school with a lot more actually Black girls and Spanish girls. It was like Black, Spanish, Portuguese, and then like other, or Latino rather, and then other. And then there, because those groups had been more urban is the only way. Is that racist? Am I racist?
Yeah, probably, but whatever. That's
but well,
a placeholder.
I mean, you have urban, suburban, and rural, and I was suburban, and then I went to a more urban school, which
Sure.
not really, because plenty of those same girls grew up in Hillside and the nice parts of Hillside, and as did I. But I also had friends who were in Newark and like projects and like in Elizabeth even, and like
Sure.
it's nothing that ever scared me. Like I wasn't like, ooh, I'm not going there. If anything, my parents were like, don't go there, and I'm like, fuck you, I do what I want.
Right.
Because I'm 16 and an asshole. But yeah, I never really experienced that as such. And if anything, I feel like I've experienced racism more like as I've moved out here. I feel very like wary. There was one guy, I was walking with my sister, and he was like, hey girls, have you heard the wonderful news? And my sister turns around and was like, no, what? And he's like, illegal immigrants aren't going to be able to get their licenses anymore soon. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. Wow.
And like, you just said this to two brown girls in San Diego. We're not saying anything. We
Right.
weren't talking
Mind your
English.
own
We weren't
business.
talking Spanish. We were just trying to find some fucking food. And you have the nerve to say that? Like, I was born here, you prick.
Right.
But you're just so floored at that point. Like, we just walked away, and I was just reeling in it for like weeks. Even now, I still get so mad about it because who the fuck are you?
Right.
Like, so things like that I feel has happened more recently, but like over time, I guess like the kind of microaggressions of, oh, you're a white girl because you listen to rock, ooh, and you're not like one of us because you can't twerk, you can't shake your ass, you can't do that. Like, sorry, I weighed between 110 130 pounds my whole life. Like, I can't shake my ass. There's not much of an ass to shake. So like shit like that, it was more microaggressions from, funnily enough, other people of color.
Well, that's how it goes. Because
yeah. You're white. What makes me white? Because I like different kind of music. Like, I like rap. I listen to a lot of rap. I know a lot of rap lyrics friggin' front to back. Like,
yeah.
So what makes me white? Because I'm not like you? Because I grew up in suburbia? Because I might have had different struggles? Like, sorry, that's not my fault. I didn't want to be born. I didn't tell my dad to become an aircraft mechanic. Like, I didn't choose any of my life. It's just the cards that I was dealt, and I was blessed. Like, I was lucky. Yeah. That was the life I led. Why are you mad at me because you struggled? That sounds like you problem.
Right. I find that, like, for me, just background, like growing up in Maryland, growing up in DC, mom was a teacher, my dad was in the military, so like when I
okay. Yeah, actually my dad retired when I was in elementary school. So he was in the military. He was in the reserves after a certain point. But yeah, my mom raised me not entirely alone, but there were a lot of times where she was alone with just me.
That happened with me too, because my dad was stationed in Korea, certain points, Turkey, Russia for a little bit. So like
Turkey's cool. I want to go to Turkey.
Turkey's dope. Yeah. But like I grew up on Andrews Air Force Base for like a time, like same as you, like around elementary school. Yeah. He retired, and what's interesting, and like I've been thinking about this more in the context of like today, because at the time I didn't really recognize this. Growing up in Maryland, and like DC is Chocolate City and all that, it was a place where like it's mostly Black people that I grew up with, and it was Black people with money because like government jobs and all that stuff. And yeah. So like I too fell in the category of like the white Black kid. You know, a bit of a nerd and stuff like that. But like, I realized and I went to Catholic school for high school. Also, very similar background.
Yeah, I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through high school, and then I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. So
all guys Catholic high school. So.
Right? Yeah.
And I think that's part of that is like our parents recognizing that like we want to give you opportunities. We're going to put you in these scenarios, get you out of public school. You know, and. I just
that
was
a threat. That was always a punishment.
Oh, you're going
to fuck up. You're going to public school. Keep your grades up, or you're going to go to public school. Yeah, I'm like, I'll go. Yes, fine. Take me out of here.
100%.
The surefire way to ensure your kids will not be Catholic is if you raise them Catholic.
Surefire. My family made in terms of like Christianity and stuff like that was sending me to Catholic school because like to their credit, like when I went to the school, like one of the first classes I had was like about religions, like just world religions.
World religions, yeah.
And it sounds weird saying it now, like given what I know today, but it's just like I wasn't really up on other religions. Like I was so kind of like keyed in on like Jesus and Christianity, like that's it.
Right, yeah.
It's like wait a minute, they do this too? Wait, they like why
right.
why didn't anybody tell me?
Like I've been watching Rami. I finished it.
Nice. Great show.
I actually recorded the scene Donish was in.
Nice.
I was like, that's my friend, I know him.
Yeah, when he's working behind the counter.
Yeah. But like even that, and it made me think like he's like, yeah, we believe in Jesus. We just like believe he's coming back. And they're like, oh, that'd be cool to meet Jesus. They're like, yeah, well, that means like it's kind of the end of the world. But yeah, like until I really took a world religion school in college. I don't really know how much they taught us about it in high school for me to even recall it. Like I remember one of my religion teachers telling me I was going to fail a semester, which I ended up passing with an A. And I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mrs. M. Mrs. Michalski. If anyone from Benedictine Academy hears this, tell Miss M I said, fuck you. I passed your class.
That's a fuck you for Miss M. Got it.
And she's like it was fucking high school. But yeah, I didn't recognize that it's all the same God.
Abrahamic religions.
Right. But I mean, obviously you have different religions that are different gods and we respect them all the same. And if anything, I'd probably, if I were to lead anywhere towards religion, it'd be towards something like that's not just the one God kind of situation.
When I was like studying for like my yoga certification and stuff like that, I read like the Bhagavad Gita and stuff like that, and that text really spoke to me because again, that it was more decentralized. It really wasn't about God per se. It was kind of about like in a sense like nature is God in some ways, like there's more agency, like self-agency, and like you can practice your own way and come to your own conclusions. Like you're basically going on your own journey and finding the truth through kind of like trial and error.
Right.
And I was like, well, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I was actually which I stopped, which I should go back into, but I was taking a Buddhism and psychology course on Coursera. And it's cool. Like super interesting how they connect some of it, like gluttony, even I guess is in a regard. It's like, and satisfaction. It's like, well, the Buddha says you can never fully be satisfied because you're always going to be searching for the next thing for satisfaction. So you just kind of have to sit and revel in the satisfaction that you are feeling at that moment, as to not continue seeking outside sources for satisfaction, which is it's a brain psychology thing too. Like you have to kind of work to just be like, okay, I'm satisfied now. Right. And even if you might need something else in a few minutes, you just have to sit with that, because you're going to just go automatically try and find what the next dopamine rush or serotonin rush or adrenaline rush, anything, just to zap your brain again to have it feeling good about something. Like, oh shit, I just ate an entire sleeve of Oreos. Fuck, now I feel something else. How am I going to satisfy myself? And then you go masturbate for an hour. And now you're like, now what? Now I need something else. So now you find yourself binge drinking. And now you just found yourself in this ongoing cycle of trying to find satisfaction instead of just sitting in it, as Buddha says, that you have to be able to accept the satisfaction that you feel. I'm sure I'm missing this up.
Sure.
Whatever, if anyone wants to correct me.
Trust me, you could study this stuff for the
rest of your life. Come on, let's talk about Buddhism. I took a free Coursera course that I fell asleep during the classes because I stopped giving a shit. Like, the pandemic happened.
Right.
But yeah, it's just a connection between that. And it's like, that's super interesting that Buddhism provides these things. So, funny thing, I think Buddhism is pretty solid.
Yeah, I like that one.
Kind of like having an elephant god too. That's pretty cool.
That is cool. I like.
It sounds like boiling it down a lot more than it is. It's super important. All of these gods are important. I just think Ganesha's pretty.
Yeah, I like. I do like basically pulling the stuff that's like useful, right? At least to me, like
right from all
across all of them, right?
Yeah.
Like I definitely have a foundation in like Christianity and stuff like that, but I think there's a lot of blind spots because for it to work, you have to be kind of dogmatic and you have to have like faith beyond like sort of logic, as it were.
And this will scare some people, I'm sure, but the satanic rules, all of us should be following them. I mean, a couple of them are like towards veganism and vegetarianism, and I'm like, man, not quite. But it's not like we worship Satan. Satan worshipers. I mean, there's a difference between Satan worshipers and the Church of Satan. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of people. There are billions of people on this earth. There are probably people who actually do worship Satan. But the Church of Satan are atheists, and it was more just like a shock value kind of name. And their rules and their followings and their teachings are basically just be a good person. If you see someone that's in harm, or like help people. It's all about empathy and love and helping people and doing the right thing and just being a good person. But because of the word Satan, everyone's like, ooh, but everyone can learn from all of them. Like the 10 Commandments is important.
Oh, totally. No,
we should all follow all of those things. It's just, ooh, we hear this bad word and they don't even take an actual further step to learn any more about it, while those are already things that everyone by default should be doing.
That's a great point. And I think that that's part of the reason I wanted to do like a podcast was that because of some of the labels we were talking about, liberals, conservatives, Trump supporters, Biden, I don't even know what the hell you call him at this point.
Blue Republican is what I've been calling him.
Yeah. But
center, I don't know.
I mean, look, he's pretty close to Republican with it seems that he's been pushed a little bit to the left. Bernie has luckily had some influence on his thinking in his administration. So I actually like the role that Bernie has kind of slotted into, and he's pushing Joe a little bit harder than I think Joe would have fought. So we'll see. The jury's still out. I know he's not.
It's just really started.
Yeah, he's not everybody's favorite. Like kind of going back to that labels thing. Like I just feel like everyone's so goddamn angry right now. And it's just so easy to dismiss people. Like the fact that like we're talking about like potentially defunding or even abolishing the police, all of a sudden, like, you're gonna get lumped into this category of all these people. But like you just broke it down, like me, Catholic school, Portuguese, African, family with decent means, college educated. Traveled,
exactly. We had very similar upbringings, just in different locations.
Like we're both like, but I get a gun. like
exactly. Yeah.
So
it's like a gun. Give me a gun. Give me an abortion. Marry. Get me a wife. Let's go.
Yeah, I want to pick. Like, it's like don't put me in the stupid box because like the only way your mind is able to process things is through
because of your myopic viewpoint. Yeah.
Right.
Binary, myopic, good words. Good.
Yeah, no, great word. And it's like I think that like that reality, and like honestly, I think part of the reason that we have the viewpoints we have are because you just laid it out. We interact with so many different people. Like I've interacted where I was kind of going with that earlier thing is when I lived in Maryland. Maryland's the old line state, the Mason-Dixon line. I've been hanging out with people in the woods, like some party, and somebody drops a fucking hard in, and like it's me and maybe one of the black person. And it's just like,
oof.
I'm so
you don't know what to do, right? You don't know what to say. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, and it's just like, what do you do in that situation? And I say all that to really just say that like I don't like getting put into a box, and I don't want people to immediately make an assumption about what I think because I don't, same as you, I don't really agree with the term, like because I'm a liberal. Same way, I'm not going to make a blanket assumption about a Trump supporter, but like when you constantly come up with the talking points of the day, it's like, well, you're feeding into this.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want us to lump you all together, but you've supported this person, so I'm gonna do that. Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
You voted for someone who the KKK supported, who the KKK endorsed. You voted for someone who has said all this racist shit. Like, I had someone be like, oh, well, Biden said this. Someone who's not, I don't even know if this person voted, because I don't think they gave a shit, and this is someone that I ended a friendship with. But they were like, oh, well, Biden has said this. Like, he's actively been racist. Like, he said this. And I was like, Trump has been racist. He was like, well, I haven't heard it. And I was like, here are super compilations. Take them.
Yep.
Why am I doing the emotional labor? Why am I doing the research for you? If you're telling me you heard Biden say something, why can't you go to YouTube, which everyone is the greatest source? I mean, that's where all our doctors get their PhDs from.
Sure.
And their doctorates, the school of fucking YouTube. But like, why do I have to do that for you? Why can't you just use the same internet that you're on to tell me how Trump has done all this good, or how he's not racist, followed in the same breath how Biden is racist? So you were able to find that information, but not Trump's.
Sure.
Because it doesn't fit your agenda or whatever. And again, this wasn't even this kid's agenda. It's just like, why do I have to look this up for you when you have that information? We're both on the same internet. You have Google it. Why, like,
right.
Or why are you just not believing me?
Right.
Why do you need a source when I'm your source? I am telling you, I have heard him say these things, and you're like, well, I haven't. Well, here.
Right. Well, here it is. Right. Yeah. It's like Biden definitely had his, to be fair, he had his weak spots, right? Like, obviously, like the '94 crime bill and stuff like that. But that never rang true to me, or like, well, like it's true that happened and it was horrific to the Black community. But like,
almost 20 years ago.
But also, like, the people that are saying he did it were there and signed on to it.
Right.
So it's like we're looking at one guy.
Well, you did it too.
Right. And like that to me is what kills me about politics, which is that we get on these like talking points and it's just, well, look what he did. It's like, but dude, you were there. Like, you championed it. The reason that they went as hard as they did is because you were like, you guys aren't going hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I agree that like that was fucked, and like, you can't fix what happened to the Black community after the '94 crime bill. However, like, that was a DC decision. So like, say, okay, you authored it and like, that's it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no one brings up like the fact that it had support from like the Congressional Black Caucus. No one brings up that like there were people in the Black community that were actively championing for this bill, and then after the fact, because look, people learn shit, which is why when we talk about like pronouns like Gina Carano, because like, yeah, man, have I said stupid shit in the past? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like now I'm like, oh shit, well, don't do that. Like,
dude,
what a revelation.
I came out as non-binary, what, like 5-6 years ago? I was like, this is silly. This is for attention. This person is still presenting as a woman. What is they? Like, this is so silly. And now I'm like, oh shit, whoops, my bad. I take that back. Like,
yeah. Well, it's interesting that like that conversation has gone on, and going back to sort of that Facebook kind of world, like I've been very disheartened by the conversation about like transgender people, and specifically like on the most fringy, dumb part that like is for whatever reason the main part of this conversation in sports, and it's just like,
yeah, right.
Most fucking people don't play sports, and we have like literal evidence of decades of transgender people competing in sports. Like, this isn't
and they're like, oh, well, what about the hormones? Well, my friend, there are certain things called testosterone blockers, and there's certain things called estrogen and hormones and doing all that. that change your entire body chemistry. There
Sure.
are trans women that joke after being on hormones, being like, I can't open a fucking pickle jar anymore,
Right.
let alone wrestle some fucking guy.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same. And women also have levels of testosterone. So if you're saying, well, why can't we test them? Or there's different levels of testosterone across the board. Right. So why isn't that these two women who might have different testosterone levels can compete, but this trans woman, because she might also have different testosterone levels, but is on testosterone blockers and estrogen, and like, it's always the people who don't do their research. Like, someone was like, ooh, I'd love to know more. Google it.
Like,
but no, instead I was like, here's what happens.
Right.
Here, on a plate, just for you, served to you in the form of a Facebook comment that I had to search and do research for, so I don't look like a dumbass, to make sure I seem like I know what I'm talking about, which I did, because I'm not an idiot and I don't just say things for the sake of saying things. But that I'm the one who had to Google it for you when we all have the same internet. I pay for mine, you pay for yours, unless you're stealing it for your neighbor, which is neither here nor there. Like, do whatever the fuck you want. Sure. But you can't be like, oh, well, tell me more. I'm just going to be like, Google it. But the thing is, when you say Google it, people are like, well, how do I know that I'll find the same resources that you did? Or how do I know this? Well, do more research. Because if you have the time to make this status and comment back and forth, you had the same time to type in 9 letters plus a period in your bar, or just open it, because most of us have Google as our homepage, and then just type it, which admittedly, stupidly enough, I do have Google on my homepage, and I'll still go type Google in the browser bar. But like, you can do the same thing. Why am I doing this for you? Like,
yeah, I'd seen someone today had like a post that was a Twitter thread, and again, like, I have to do more research on the things being purported in the thread. I'm not saying like everything I read was factual, but like
right,
they just like, they broke it down in a way that like, I really don't think that it's not about the facts of the case, right? It's like the feelings. Like, every time you see this conversation, from like a certain perspective, it's always like the most like sort of like quote unquote male presenting version playing a sport. You're like, well, what if this person's playing like your daughter in sports and stuff like that? And it's just like, I don't think that we need to shit on an entire segment of the population for something as arbitrary as competing in amateur sports.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't do that.
Are they making money for it? Like, why do you care that much?
Yeah.
Do you think that this trans woman might get a leg up? Because at a certain point, it's not like they can, like, well, that's not true, because obviously we've all seen the drug use in Olympic athletes and professional athletes, but like, people are like, well, why can't this woman take testosterone when this trans woman already has natural levels of testosterone that women already have? Shut the fuck up, because you don't actually know what the hell you're talking about. How about you talk to trans people? Or again, Google it. Or like, you have all the resources and all the education. You mean to tell me at this point in time, you are more liberal than not, but you don't have any trans friends that like, or maybe you do and they just don't trust you enough to have come out to you that they're just presenting as whatever they're presenting as and haven't said that they're trans. But like, you mean to tell me that you don't have other people to actually have this conversation with, that you're asking all your cisgender heterosexual male and more often than not hotep friends, because they always have some shit to say.
Well, everything is a Trojan horse to destroy the Black community by inserting homosexuality, which is a trick by the white devil to genocide the Black race,
to weaken the Black men.
Which every fucking time I hear that weak ass argument, I just think about like all of the people that are LGBTQ and stuff like that, that were like literally helped you get to this point. Bayard Rustin's a great example. Bayard Rustin, the gay man who basically orchestrated the civil rights like march on Washington, but had to take a back seat because he was gay.
Right.
And they were like, nah, dog, you can't be the face.
King Jr., now's your time to shine, pal. Yeah, shit like that. Like, or like the same with Stonewall.
Yeah, Stonewall. I was reading about this activist Pauli Murray, and she they actually, when she was alive, she identified as she, but probably today would fit more into like a trans masculine, like maybe a he they category, but like basically like set the framework for major civil rights arguments that are like still used today. That like helped literally help Black people get closer to equality in this country. And it's like we've erased all of these people from our history. And we're acting like this is something that like Hollywood just orchestrated to like like you said, this hotepery, and it's sad. It really like it bums me out.
I wonder if they think that white homosexuals are also making a choice. Like I wonder if it's like solely reserved for Black people. If they think being gay across the board is a choice, or if they're just like, nah, those white folks, they can do whatever the hell they want. They're crazy and they're gonna be gay anyway, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they were born that way, maybe not, whatever. But for Black people, it's always, well, these Black men that have been raised in single woman households, or they were raised by a mother and a grandmother, but didn't have the father figure. That's why they're gay.
Complete anecdotal bullshit. Anecdotal bullshit.
That's not why they're gay. They're gay because they're gay.
Right. I've seen it firsthand, and I think that like going back that it does, and this is a privilege. Like I've met different people, I've interacted, I've had close relationships with people that are trans, and like, oh, you're not putting, this isn't like you mentioned, this isn't like a choice, right? This is who you are, and I don't know, like I just lately have been disheartened by the amount of transphobia that I'm seeing online, and it's really disturbing. And like the problem is like I'm saying lately because like I've had the privilege to be late to the party.
Right. Yeah, of course. It's been, I mean, obviously it's always been there, but especially over the last year or two, it feels so much more prevalent, especially as more people are coming to terms with, oh shit, I'm non-binary, like myself. Like, and also I've acted in ways that were transphobic that I didn't recognize as such.
Sure.
For example, I outed someone not knowing that it wasn't common knowledge for them, that it wasn't something that everyone had already known, and I did that and I fucked up. But after that point, I learned about it. But prior to that, I was never transphobic or homophobic. Like I was always the kid championing for all those rights in high school, in Catholic school, when I had to fight for why gay people should be able to get married. And then again in college, in a freshman class, I had to do the same fucking thing.
Right.
And now I'm just like, trans women are women. Like, why? Like, we should just be able to just drop the trans part. Like, I mean, obviously, some people, it's an identity that's important to them. I'm not saying to erase that from their identity, but I think as a society, we need to just view people as who they say they are. If we're supposed to believe people when they show who they are the first time, when we're talking about red flags, why are we not doing the same thing positively? Why are we not just like, oh, hey, I'm Sage, I'm non-binary, I like, maybe today I'm a woman, maybe I'm not, I'm she, they, whatever, and that's it. And it shouldn't be preferred pronouns. What are your pronouns? Period. What do you identify as? Period. What gender do you align with? Whatever. But it's not preferred. It's not that this is a preference. I mean, it's not a preference. I would prefer to not have to add another thing to my list of fucking struggles,
Right.
just as being a Black woman. And that's another thing I didn't actually identify as until the last few years. Like, I always said I was Dominican, and not that I ever said I wasn't proud, like, but people that are like, oh, you're Black, I'm like, no, I'm Dominican, because I didn't think of it as anything else, because I was proud of who I was.
Right. No,
and then time went on, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, Afro Latina is a thing, and that's where this hair comes from. And now I can be like, yeah, I'm Black, or I'm Afro Latino, or whatever, versus being like, no, I'm not, or I'm just Dominican. And it's like, Sarah, like, well, call me whatever the hell you want, just as long as you don't call me late to dinner. But like, yes, because I am a 65-year-old woman in there, and that's why I just said that. But I would always be like, no, I'm Dominican, I'm Dominican, I'm Dominican. And that was never to shit on Black people. That's just because I was so proud of being Dominican. I had never known anything different.
Sure.
My parents, like, I never even said I'm American, which is what a lot of white people love to do. Well, you're born here, you're American. No, Sharon, just because you're white and you're a conglomeration of all these other white countries doesn't mean I don't get to be proud of the country I know my ancestors are from, or from my parents and my grandparents are from, at least, and my great-grandparents, and then past that, whatever. But we just need to accept people for who they say they are. And if this trans woman is just like, yeah, I'm a woman, cool. I don't care if you're trans or not. I don't care what you have in your pants. I don't care if you're pre-op, post-op, on hormones, not on hormones. But it's not the whole bathroom argument that people love to make. Like, you really think people are dressing and identifying as women to make their life harder, to just go into a women's bathroom and assault someone? No, I've never been assaulted by a woman in a public restroom. I mean, I've never been assaulted by a man either, because I've been lucky enough not to, but it's never happened. And we've all probably used restrooms with trans people more than we know. So just the fact that you're like, oh, well, people are doing this to sneak into bathrooms, men are wearing dresses. No, then guess what you're scared of? You're scared of men. You're not scared of trans people. It's men that are the problem.
Correct. And it goes back to you see these arguments, and like, they're just not organic arguments, right? Like, it doesn't, to me, make sense that like everyone, like we were saying before about the teen flipping a burger, right? It's the same thing as this like mythological guy in a dress assaulting people. It's the same as the super Hulk trans person dominating women's sports. It's like, don't you think, with all of the transphobia out there, don't you think that if that was happening real time, that someone would have a fucking camera on that person and be like, this is exactly what we were talking about, instead of your like memery on fucking Facebook, like, here's a still photo of a person doing something, and I'm going to tell you exactly what this is, but don't look it up, because you're not going to necessarily find the story you're looking for. Like I said, I'm disheartened by it, but then at the same time, conversations like this are important. Like, we have to keep talking about this. We have to keep historical context in place, because like, we're literally at a point where there's a segment of the population that wants you to think that any advancement in civilization happened because of white people, right? Like, that is exactly. Sort of the premise of January 6th.
All of our systems, if they're not based in racism, because we have the white people who have quite literally walked on the backs of Black people to build the systems that we have now. If they're not built in racism, they're built in the patriarchy, and if not built in that, they're built in both. Like, it's either racism, the patriarchy, or both. Like, and it's ridiculous that people try and blame feminism on things that are either A, racist, or B, products of the patriarchy. Like, we're just looking for equality. And I mean, like, we can throw all the bad men into the gulag for all I care. Like, just keep the okay one. Not even okay. There's a bar. There's now a higher bar. You can toss me too.
I get it. I've been trash.
The guy I'm talking to now is like, he's like it was something that he said. He was like, maybe I'm not in like support of that, but I am in a full support of throwing all the men into like re-education camps, myself included, just put all of us away. And then like, until we are all better, like women, non-binary folks, queer folks, y'all can set the bar, but that all men, cis straight men, you know what, trans men too, while they're at it, because there are trash trans. Just because you're trans does not mean you get a pass to not be trash. So, like, all y'all, just throw them, lock them up. You come back as better people, and if you don't, you stay until you are better. I don't know. We'll just beat it out. That there are some dominatrixes that can probably do some good work.
Sure.
But yeah, like this has gotten so off the rails.
Oh yeah, well, whatever. That's part of the plan. I think that I think that's part of it. Like I've found times where because look, we're a living, functioning society that like things keep moving. Like gay marriage was not legal,
evolving, adjusting. Yeah,
gay marriage was not legal 10 years ago.
Right.
Right. Like
not federally anyway.
Yeah, it's exactly not at a federal level. So like we're talking about 2013, right? Like I'm just like I have had, opinions that have fed into the mainstream that have been sort of retrofitted to be like, oh, that was not a good thing. And a lot of what happens is people fight back against, like, they don't want to feel like they were bad people. Right. I certainly don't want to feel like I was a bad person, but like I've held views that in the context of today are not.
Likewise.
Right. I think we all have.
We're all stupid.
I'm definitely stupid. and like, what's hardening actually is that like, because we're having this type of conversation, there's more people having this type of conversation, and hopefully over time it'll be better for trans people. It really does rely on us to continue to just like do what the fuck we think is right, even while there's a group of people that like are actively pushing back against it.
Right.
So it's definitely something I wanted to bring up because like I've just noticed that like that's been on like high volume, and part of it is because I think it's because Biden signed that executive order of transgender in the military, transgender sports inclusivity, and executive orders are mostly bullshit, so like it's not like he really did anything. But I give him credit for even spending the political capital, because like I was shocked that he even did it, because it didn't seem like something like again, not to give him too much credit because these things should already exist, but like didn't seem like something he had to do, right? I think we all have a I forget the word, but like I think we all have like the responsibility to do the right thing. But like for a politician to do something like right adjacent, I'm like, okay. All right, I'll give you.
Yeah, because it is still something important. Like I know, like most executive orders are bullshit, but there are already trans people in the military that helps protect them even further. So while I know a lot of people are more like, well, nobody should be in the military. Like, why? Oh, congratulations, we're allowing trans people to willingly join and go get themselves killed or whatever. But it's like, no, there are people who are already in the force, and there are going to be people that do want to join the military. They feel like it's a bigger cause. And maybe it won't always necessarily be the poor 17, 18-year-old kid, right? Like fresh out of a recruiter's office. Which is what my sister did. My sister wanted to join that, and she's been in for 8 years now. And like, good for her. She's solid. It'll probably be a career for her. So like, she'll retire at 37. But there are kids who do join because of the GI Bill and because of tuition and because of promises of a better life, and then getting out of the situation that they're in. And there are always going to be gay, trans, queer, LGBT people who are going to join the military.
And there always has.
I don't know that we necessarily need to abolish the military. I think there could be some reform in that regard as well. But they'll just hide it.
Right.
So it just makes it like an easier thing. Like we're showing our support for the LGBTQ community, especially trans people, in signing this. Like it protects them.
and that goes back to that conversation about erasure, which is there already has been. There always will be. And like this idea, I think that there's too many people that think these ideas are new. And it's because, like you said, they don't know how the Google search bar works.
Right.
Right? Like
it's all new. Oh, well, these snowflakes, this wasn't around 20 years ago. Yeah, it was. You just weren't paying attention because something else was happening 20 years ago.
Right.
Or 30 years ago, or whatever the fuck. Back in my day, back in your day, you got upset if someone Black did so much as sit next to you at a diner. Like, what are you talking about back in your day? Back in your racist day? Back in your homophobic day? Back in your day when everything was fucked up?
Yeah.
Like, what back in your day? Why are you so proud of how fucked up you were? Why are you so proud about the struggles you went through? Why are you so proud about how bad of a life and how shitty you were to other people? That's nothing to be proud of. You're proud you were an asshole? Wow. I mean,
a lot of people are proud they were assholes.
I say I'm an asshole. Don't get me wrong. But it is also so much easier to be kinder to people than to not. But you mean to tell me these are things that, back in my, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Well, from
Shut up. You just make yourself sound like an awful person. Like, we're so sensitive now.
Now, from a psychological standpoint, that is a common phenomena. People always basically take a calendar, go back 20 and 30 years, and people throughout history will always say it was better then. That's just like, it's a function of human the human species. They assume that the past was better than the current. And this is in because a lot of ways,
they hate change. They don't want to see the evolution of things. They don't want, it's their bubble of, oh, well, I grew up this way and I had it hard and my life was rough and my parents beat me and I turned out okay. And now these snowflakes, these kids, no, you didn't. Go to therapy. Oh, well, now everyone's in therapy. Yeah, you know what? You should be too. Figure out why you are the way you are. Because if you think your parents beat you and you're okay, you're not okay. Like, go to therapy and unpack all of it. Like, oh, you kids are so sensitive. Why am I sensitive? What makes me sensitive? Because I think that people should have access to healthcare. Because I think that everyone should be able to love, not everyone, asterisks, not everyone. Most people should be able to love and be with who they want to be with.
Right.
Like,
that's a good asterisk. I know there's some there's some lines that need to be drawn.
There's a line. You know the line.
Yeah.
But what makes me so sensitive? Because I think homeless people shouldn't be on the streets, because I think that people shouldn't be racist, because I think sexist jokes are more often than not pretty terrible. Some of them are funny. I laugh at bad jokes. We all do. I'm a millennial. I have shitty humor.
Yeah, like, I'm a comic, so I
right, exactly. I did stand up a handful of times. I told jokes about being a spaghetti lesbian. Like, I've said, like, we've all said offensive things. I still say offensive things. It's part of humanity. It's part of life, but it's a difference of straight up just making disgusting jokes towards someone and offensive humor. Because I laugh at offensive humor. Look, I love Bill Burr. I love Jim Jeffries. I love Hannibal Buress. Dave Chappelle, I'd probably like him a little more if it wasn't like the whole, like, his transphobia and just being a moron in general. Like, I know a lot of people are like, he's the GOAT. No. Friggin' Carlin. Like, I can, and I understand I listed mostly white men. But they are funny. It's all funny, and humor is subjective, of course, but you can't just be like, oh, well, these kids are so offended. Well, what did you say? Oh, well, I called someone a porch monkey or whatever the fuck. Like, the most racist thing you can think of. And they're like, and they were offended. How do you not see how that's not offensive? And they're like, well, in my day, in your day, it wasn't offensive. And I even, you know what, in your day, it was.
It was offensive.
Just nobody wanted to call you out on it for fear of the backlash, because it was an unpopular opinion. And now it's like,
Yeah, like it was an act of aggression, and like someone like
Right.
ourselves would be in a situation where it's like I said before, being the only black guy in like a 5 mile radius. You know, it's like
Right.
just because you said something, it's like, well, look, he doesn't mind. It's like, oh, I mind. I just can't do anything about it right now.
Right. It's so much easier to keep my mouth shut at this point in time,
Yeah, because I got.
especially even 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. Like, you're a little bit older than me. I was in college in 2009, and a lot of the offensive humor that was offensive then, case in point, the Sarah Silvermans of the world, which
Sure.
now that makes me sound sexist bringing up a white woman comic, but she's been very offensive. Um,
So
and
that was her
now
brand
that's the shit you'd get canceled for. It was her brand, yeah, of
for
course.
sure.
But there are certain things that jokes can absolutely be made of, and then not. Like, I've been watching Difficult People, and one of the characters is trans, and she brings up 9/11. Like, she's very much a 9/11 conspiracy theorist, and to the point where I was just like, she's getting kind of aggravating, but now she's growing on me.
Okay.
But like, as a trans woman, she's like, there was something that she said. She was like, and I can say that because I was whatever. And she was like, oh no, I meant faggot. Like something like that. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I can say faggot because I'm queer. I can say dyke because I'm lesbian. Like shit like that. Where it's like, but you can't say it as a joke
Right.
anymore. Like
Right.
gay people can, gay men especially, like they can. But you can't just say these things just because you think it's fucking okay and think
Sure.
it's not gonna offend someone because it didn't offend someone a few years ago even. But now times are changing, and if you, again, you as a comic, and I see the people in your circle, and there are a lot of people I don't like in, well, our circle really, because like
Yeah.
Gordon's one of my best friends, like I love all y'all, um that will continue to say outlandish things and be like, well, how was that offensive? Or what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Well,
I I
Hollywood.
personally I personally curate quite a bit. Like there's just stuff that like I don't think it's worth it, right? Like, okay, sure, someone may laugh at this, but like what am I doing to other
Right.
people? How am I affecting like the world around me? And it's like, do I want to reinforce this system of I can just fire at the hip because I can. Like, and like you're saying about the difficult people person, like, oh, there are like queer people in my life and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I could make a joke because I know someone and they're cool, but it's like,
Right. No, it's like you can't.
no, exactly. And it comes down to like, it's not my place, right? Like, I'm not here to, speak for a group that I don't represent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also not in the business of when the goal of comedy, in my opinion, is that like you're casting kind of a wide net because no one knows who you are. You're coming up cold. So
Right.
within 5-10 minutes, you have to get people to kind of understand your worldview and laugh. Like that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do it at the expense of someone else that might be in the crowd. Right.
Right.
Like, and you're right. There are a lot of people in that world that just have just bad takes and terrible world views.
Yeah, but they still think they're all so funny because of these circles they surround
Right,
themselves with.
right, right. And if you put yourself in an echo chamber where you just allow yourselves to be the worst, you're going to become the
Mm-hmm.
worst.
Right.
And I think that's what's the problem with again, like we were talking about transgender sports, transgender athletes, and it's always the same fucking post. This person beat
Mm-hmm.
these people, and
It's a
then
10-year-old article or
I
whatever, however long
exactly
ago. And they're like, well, this one instance. And it's like, well, why is this one instance constantly brought up? Have you ever considered that maybe they were just actually better at the sport? And it has
possible.
nothing to do with the fact that they're transgender. And maybe they have the exact same testosterone levels as the other person. They were wrestling or playing basketball or whatever the fuck they were doing. And they were just actually the better
Right.
athlete. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they were a man or a boy, even because, again, it's mostly high school and college shit. Like,
Most, as I said, most of the population does not play sports. Most of them don't play sports at a high level. The sample size that you're pulling from is terrible. Actually, the
right.
Olympics
And have you
and
actually asked the athletes who are competing with these people? Are they saying they're not fine with it? Because I'm pretty sure it's just their parents that the ones who gave out the participation trophies in the first place, that are the ones that are like, oh, well, my daughter doesn't want to play against this kid who was once a boy. Mm-hmm. Does your daughter care? Does she? Did you ask her? Because I bet you she doesn't fucking care.
That's like there was an example of someone was interviewing basically like Trump supporters, right? And they were talking about flag burning. And like if you ask the average person that's like pro-troops, they're like, no, don't burn the flag because it's disrespectful to the troops. And if you ask the troops, like, yeah, no, that's why I even do it, so you can burn the stupid flag.
Right, so you can burn the flag.
Right. Like you, especially for people that claim the First Amendment is the Bible.
Right.
It's like
right. Burning the flag, I don't think is anywhere in the Constitution, so you can't say like it's unconstitutional. You can say it's fucked up because you're that American, or it's un-American, or whatever the hell you want to say, but you can't. Is everything is unconstitutional? Is it though? Is it? You guys just don't think you understand what the Constitution means.
I found it jarring when I saw like a Trump flag being like replacing the American flag on the Capitol. Like I saw that and I said, that's too much, right? Like whenever you're following anybody, like, I voted for Obama first time. I didn't vote for him the second time for reasons. But like
I wasn't old enough the first time, so I voted for him the second time.
I mean, I'm old.
How old are you? Like 3-4 years older than me?
Yeah. I'm only about that much older. But like, where's I getting at? But I guess like what I'm saying is
the Trump flag, which is, how is the American flag now all of a sudden not a symbol of America? Or even like if you're trying to overthrow, if you're trying to overthrow America and overthrow the government and make sure Trump wins because you believe that the election was stolen and you're still for democracy in a twisted way, because that's what they believe. They thought it was stolen. They thought they were doing something patriotic and not democratic, because that sounds fucked up, but like it is a democracy at the end of the day, even being run by a Republican president, still a democracy. Yeah. So that it still blows my mind that the American flag became a symbol solely for Democrats in a way, ironically enough, that they put up the Trump flag. I don't get it. I don't know. I mean, like, that's one thing like that I can honestly say I don't get it. There are plenty of other Trump things. I get it because they're fucked up in the head, or I get it because they truly believe that this person was doing all the right things, that was in their best interest, blah, 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 whatever they got brainwashed towards. But the Trump flag is one thing I just don't get.
Yeah. There's the cult of personality that is Trump. For his supporters, he fights for them, right? At least that's the interpretation.
That's what they believe, yeah.
Right, and that like he's the last person that says it like it is, and
oh my god, I was just about to say that.
I know. Bring us back to that comedy sort of comedy conversation.
Right.
It's too much. It's too much. I just, anytime you find yourself in a situation where you're lifting up one guy like that, it's probably a problem. Just historically.
Right. Why are you worshiping him?
Right.
Like, there have been TikToks that people have stitched over, because I don't really have Republicans that pop up on my feed unless it's a stitch or something. That this one person was like, where are all the Biden fans at? Like, y'all are hella quiet, blah, blah, blah. It's like, because we're his constituents. Like, we're not like, he works for us.
Right.
I'm not a fan. I didn't vote for him. And it should, if anything, it's Biden supporters or Biden voters, but fans. He's not a celebrity. He's a politician. And we don't want him. I mean, we got what we got, but like, I don't want him.
It's interesting because to that point, the Biden sort of phenomenon here is that like it's not the same thing, right? Like exactly what you're saying. He is a guy that's was voted for in. Okay, wait, I do know where I'm going with this. All right, what I find interesting is that Trump, again, one of his great strengths is marketing, and he was able to convince people to start measuring democracy in ways that are not how you measure democracy, right? Putting people in an airplane hangar is not like a representation of how many votes you will get. People putting your flag on a truck or a boat is not a representation of how many votes you're going to get. But like he convinced himself and his supporters that like, look, all these flags and boats and people at a rally, clearly I can't lose. And because of our bubbles, right? Like if you're not seeing Biden supporters, it's because you're not a Biden supporter, like you mentioned. I don't see a lot of Trump supporters in my feed. I see a few and like I note them, but it's not like if I was a Trump supporter, I would have almost all Trump supporters in my feed. And it's just like we're not measuring shit in a way that makes sense to me. And I've been really confused as to how he was able to hijack the message so much that like we're looking at a boat parade and saying, oh my God, he's going to win. Like that just doesn't make any fucking sense.
And that whole thing that still is one of the funniest fucking things I've seen to come out. Like,
the boat
sorry anyone got hurt, but
I think they were all right.
But it's just so stupid that it happened.
I think we actually might be in a simulation at this point. This is getting absurd.
It doesn't feel real. Dude, I still haven't really gone back and seen like full clips of January 6th that I still like rationally, I know it happened. I accepted it as a thing that happened, but it still does not feel real. It feels like it didn't happen. I guess maybe because I wasn't watching the news like as it was happening, or like I was kind of watching reports as things were going on. Like I was done with my work day. It was like, it wasn't something that I was like actively paying attention to because I wasn't like sitting on my computer anymore. I was watching something or whatever. And I was just like, oh shit. Because by the time I did see anything that had happened, it was just like the few people who had already gone inside the building versus the thousands of people who had marched and were there and were out there. I love the people that are like, there were 500,000 of us. There were 1 million of us. Were there? Were there?
Not even close.
Do numbers?
Not even close.
Like, I don't know how many. I know it's in the thousands. It's not like they were like, oh, there was no more than 1,000 people. It was thousands of people. But I still didn't view it as this major historical event for whatever reason. In my mind, I guess because we're living through it, that I'm just like, I don't want to live through history anymore. I don't. Let nothing happen until I die. Please. I'm fine.
This is the second time in recent memory where like I've been tethered to an event through like just circumstances that have like
because
changed my feeling about like conspiracy and stuff like that. Like I used to live literally 3 doors down from Comet Ping Pong, which is where the Pizzagate conspiracy started. Like I know people that worked at Comet Ping Pong. I've been there.
Wow.
Pretty normal place. Pretty normal people that work there. There is no basement because like I've been like all this.
I've been in there.
Right. And like so like when that conspiracy theory popped off, I was like, whoa, you can make
Pizzagate
anything. And then like this one, the Capitol was pretty rough for me the day of because I remember when some of the barricades first started coming down and stuff like that. I texted my brother, I was like, yeah, what's it look like out there? It looks like it's starting to get a little chippy. This is when it was like nothing was really that crazy yet, but they did do like a lockdown. He was like, yeah, you know, like I'm kind of watching it. We'll see what happens. And then you're watching the chaos that happened. It's like, oh shit, like my brother is in there. And there are like armed insurrectionists in the Capitol, right? So like I'm super close to it. So like it was realer for me and my family because like by definition it was. But I know exactly what you mean. Like it still doesn't feel real. Like the scope of what happened is still like it's almost hard to perceive, which is why I think this impeachment is kind of happening the way that it is. People really can't wrap their head around it.
Dude, this is the third impeachment of our lifetime. And there have been 3 impeachment. Like,
yeah,
and
like
then one
trials.
of them got impeached twice.
Right.
This is the second trial, really, right? Because the first one, his first one didn't really go to trial, did it?
It went to
was
trial.
Just kind of. Oh, okay.
Trial.
Like kind of happened.
Yeah, it was like about 2-week trial. There was evidence and witnesses. It was weird. This one's going to be over by tomorrow.
Soon. Yeah.
And look, he's going to be vindicated by his followers, but like the reality is like this is a terrible event for the country. I don't care how you fall in the political spectrum. Like, the capital of the United States was occupied.
Yes.
You can't take that back.
But there are people who support it.
Right.
And it's crazy that they think they were doing the right thing. Were they? Did they? Because 5 of your people, I don't know if that includes the cop or not, but like 5 of y'all and a cop, and y'all are all Blue Lives Matter and shit, died.
Right.
And you are still okay that this happened? How?
You got the cop that died. You had the cop that committed suicide later. Who was injured and then had to like basically go back to work, and was probably dealing with like
the trauma.
Trauma, exactly. And had to like, it was too much, you know?
Right.
Which I completely understand. I mean, look, like I said, my brother's down there and he's working like 14-hour shifts. It's crazy. But like there were 100 and, you know, to varying degrees, there were like 146 injured police officers during that time frame. So like the focus of this is so fucking stupid to me. They're like, the fact that we're even really kind of wasting time about like red versus blue again is like not the point.
Yeah, it completely misses the point.
Like Trump supporters or like Trump himself taking this on is like, oh, they're coming after us. It's like, no. This can't happen. Like, if it was Obama or something like that, like this can't happen.
Yeah.
And I just like, I hate that this has been put into the framework of red versus blue is basically what I'm getting at. Because it's so much fucking bigger than that. And we're not going to be able to get this shit back on track if we keep doing this tribal shit without any facts tethering us to the real world.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, I used to be more optimistic about this stuff. I'm definitely more pessimistic and cynical.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just like, fucking do whatever you want. Like, you don't even have to like really take in their opinions anymore. I know that's not going to sound good, but like the reality is like, look, we've dealt with 8 to 12 years of obstructionist government, where like if your party is not the party in charge, they're not going to get any of their shit. And it's just like, you know, man, just do whatever you want at this point. Like push it through, because Republicans are going to hate whatever's happening anyway. And if another Republican gets in, Democrats are going to hate whatever they're doing. So it's like, that's the game. We hate.
It's just this back and forth until we die.
Yeah. So just fucking, when your side's in, enjoy the ride and brace for when the other side gets in, man.
Yeah.
I hate that we're there, but like I want people to be less angry all the time. And like my goal is to try to like just throw information out there. It's like, this is the facts of the case.
Right.
You know, like this is gonna happen. Like when I say that Trump's gonna get acquitted, for a lot of people, they're like, that's bullshit. It shouldn't happen. It's like, of course it's gonna happen.
Right. Yeah. Is your head in the sand?
Right. It's like it's a political thing. So don't argue with me for 3 days about what's constitutional or not. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's constitutional. Like you're gonna get a political result.
Happening. Yeah.
Right. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Well, shit.
Man.
Well, hey, this was a cool convo.
This was good. I haven't talked to you in a long time. A while.
Yeah. Was there
I have a picture from your wedding still up, and I was like, "That's me at my friend's wedding," and I look happy, and I had a good time with my dope ass blazer.
It was a dope blazer. Great time. A lot of extracurriculars at that wedding.
Yeah. Oh my god, I know.
That was fun.
I bet that Sarah's gonna fight someone by the end of this night. I was like double fisting.
Molly was working behind the bar by the end of the night.
Yeah, I know. Oh my god. That was a fun night. That was a very good wedding. Oh, it was because I was specifically talking about your vows. I was like, that wedding, those two people, like, when you see people, you're like, they're in love. Like, they are in love. Like, they love each other. Like, their vows.
Yeah. I'll put it like this. That wedding, again, just showed to me that was a very diverse group of people. Like, every
you had a man in a kilt.
There was a man in a kilt.
Women in suits.
Like a traditional like Indian garb.
Right, yeah. Capri with her combat boots.
Yep. all parts of the spectrum. And like, I think that like, I'm so fortunate that I have the experience to know people like yourself and others like that. So that like, I don't think that my brain is in that like head in the sand. Like, I only see the world in one viewpoint because I get challenged a lot. And I think it's important for everybody to just like challenge yourself, take in more information from different sources, parse it out, and it doesn't have to be a big fucking to-do.
Yeah, right. For sure.
Yeah. But
just gotta keep on
also I like your style too. Like double fisting and fighting people like that.
Yeah. I didn't fight anybody.
You didn't. Like I always appreciate your brand of I guess politics, but like I just like that you do fight, like you don't take shit in a way that like I'm very pragmatic and diplomatic about things, but like it was like, no, this is what I think and this is the way it is. And like you need people like that.
No, the amount of people, like there was my favorite comment, especially over the last 2 months, like when someone would say some dumb shit, like head up their ass type shit. I'm like, yo, maybe you should shove your head up your ass a little bit further. So maybe I'll just swallow it whole and we don't have to hear your stupid ass opinions anymore.
Yep.
Pretty sure that got me blocked.
It's blocking season.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it. I've been blocking, unfriending left and right, but it's a good feeling to get blocked because you made someone that mad. Like for me, it's not even mad. It's just like, you're so stupid. I don't want to engage in this any further. And unless I block you to protect you from me being mean, well, I'm just going to stop this right here.
Yeah. I typically don't block, but I had to block someone because I got into an argument because of January 6th on Facebook. So it's not a real argument. Yeah. But I was like, oh, this is terrible. And someone posted like, what about the rioters? And I'm like, well,
oh yeah, there was a lot of those.
What about the Wendy's basically? And I'm like, well, like obviously, my background with the police. So I was like, well, that's bad too. And I was like, it was like, next time you want to like take a shot at me, like, because my brother was on the Capitol, was like I got actual skin in the game. And this guy who I assumed, because you said, what about the rioters, would be a Blue Lives Matter type person. I showed a photo of my brother, like on the Capitol.
Yeah, the one you sent us. Yeah.
Yeah, with the insurrectionists. And I was like, yeah, while you're being a keyboard warrior, like my family is like, we're in the trenches. Like we're like protecting this country. And the guy said something.
Right.
He was like, oh, he looks real brave, like 20 against 1. Like the cops. It was like, first of all, you don't know what cropping a fucking photo is. And 2, you're so stupid that this conversation can't go on.
Yeah. I no longer want to engage in this.
Like, what was your point? Like, if your original point was rioters are bad, we need law and order, and then you finish by saying, fuck that cop.
How, yeah.
It's like, you're not a logical actor in this conversation, so I won't engage with you anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the same thing, he wouldn't say the same thing about peaceful protesters that were unarmed versus these cops in riot gear. So either the cops are 20 against 1 and fuck the cops, or fuck the cops in both situations. But no, it's the cops were protecting the community from the rioters or the protesters.
Right.
But it's not. But they weren't protecting the Capitol because fuck the politicians.
Right.
Fuck them. Whatever.
And there's no logical consistency there, which is why I'm glad we got to talk a lot about like talking points. I think people should really reflect on like where your thoughts originated.
Yeah, for sure.
It's usually not yourself.
Yeah. We're the sheeple. Well, they have the free thoughts. They're the independent thinkers.
Right.
We're the sheeple. Barbara, whatever her name, and her husband, Joe, they know best with their shared Facebook profile. And they're going to post the best posts and they know what they're talking about. And I'm going to believe them.
But, you know, like, again,
But they won't go and like listen to NPR or even read the news or even anything unbiased. I'm not telling you to go to CNN. I'm not telling you to go to Fox.
No.
Find independent news sources. But no, they can't do that.
Or
because
like,
they also have an agenda.
Or like, try this one, right? Like when we were talking about sexual assault survivors and stuff like that in policing, you were like, well, actually, it's this. I was like, huh. Like, not fuck you. You know what you're talking about. I was like, oh, I don't know what the fuck I was talking about. I was talking out of my ass just now. I better go like inform myself.
Like in that case, it is bad. But yeah, it's all.
No, exactly. Like it's bad, but like there's more to it. And then when you put it that way, it's like, but it's better to like think about the victims in that way because like what would make a victim withdraw something like that? So like it again spurs on that conversation, makes you dig deeper instead of like just making a blanket statement because it fits your narrative.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, unless you got something you want to throw in.
No, I think we can wrap this up. This has been awesome.
Hey man, it's good. If you ever want to jump on again, I'm gonna try to do these like twice a week, so I'm like it'll be a rotating cast of characters.
Yeah, word. You should do like a double one. Do one with me and Gordon.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Gordon will definitely want to do that.
Yeah.
If you want to throw in like your Cash App or something like that, I don't know if anyone's gonna give you money, but
my Venmo and my PayPal are both at Saje Perez 12. SJPEREZ 12.
All right, so yeah,
help me pay for weed and cookies.
There you go. Or weed cookies, 2 birds, 1 stone.
Oh, weed cookies, yeah, that's so true.
Well, hey, thanks for being on. I'll let you know when this is coming out, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Yeah. Later, Reg.
Later.
Bye.